there should not be any extraordinary extraneous use of nerve energy. So anytime we use herbs, anytime we use condiments, anytime we use salt, anytime we cook the food, anytime we use processed foods, anytime we eat things that are not conducive to our species specific diet, that are not conducive to our anatomy, we are in fact exciting, disturbing, or impressing upon the body. And again, this can be called stimulating. And so, if we keep reading on here, if a person is manifesting the symptoms of a cold and taking vitamin C aborts those symptoms, this effect can no more be regarded as nutritional than can the effects of taking aspirin. The vitamin C is having a pharmacological effect that is a drug effect, not a nutritional effect. If a woman has severe menstrual cramps and taking dolomite relieves her symptoms, it is foolish to think that a need for calcium has been satisfied. So again, because we are taking vitamin C for the symptoms of a cold, or we are taking dolomite for the symptoms of menstrual cramps, right? And the symptoms disappear. That does not mean, so because we use these disturbances, these excitements, these impressions, and these stimulations to get rid of the symptoms, does not mean the underlying conditions of the disease, of the underlying conditions of the problem has been cleared. It actually means that they've just been stimulated and irritated. Welcome, Lauren. I've been kind of filling in. I just was talking about Russell Thacker Trail, talking about how anything specific effects that occur from ingestion of foods or nutrients are the results of stress and irritation and not the results of an enhancement of nutrition. So I'm kind of going into the fact that like vitamin C, for instance, to cure the symptoms of a cold, or dolomite to cure the symptoms of a menstrual cramps, is not going at the underlying the reasons for the condition. Rather, it's stimulating, it's exciting, it's disturbing the process of the body to get in the way of it. And so here's my first question to you. Welcome, Lauren. I hope you're
Yeah,
doing well.
thank you.
Yeah, I want to ask, how do we correctly define to the public uh things that are acting on the body, like, or how do we say how the body so how food doesn't act on the body, but how the body acts on the food, and how if something does act on the body, it's toxic. Can you go into depth with that?
Yeah, and it's not really that the substance is acting on the body because substances are inert. So that, inert means dead. It means cannot take action. So anything like an herb or a supplement or like the vitamin C, you know, IV vitamin C or anything like that that they're using to supposedly cure diseases, that is the substance itself is coming into the body. It's a material. It's like,
Mm.
bricks building a house. Bricks don't build the house. Bricks are just the material. So when we ingest materials, those materials are either beneficial, like good building materials, or they're harmful. When materials are harmful, the body turns on the fight or flight stress response, triggers a dopamine release, and releases adrenaline, and so we get this stimulation response. And so what happens is, if you say, for the example of the cold, if you have a cold, you're feeling run down, your energy is low, your body's creating all of these expulsion symptoms in order to clean and repair itself. And
Mm.
then you take something that is a poison, your body has to stop that cleaning process. And it's akin to like the red alert on a battleship, right? It's all hands on deck, every man, a frenzy of energy. And that frenzy of energy is going not to helping the body heal, but to stopping the cleaning process and then addressing the immediate incoming poison. So, your body in the initial stages of the cold, your body is trying to clean out old poisons, then you're applying a new poison, and then your body gets very ramped up with energy in order to address that immediate threat. And so we get this false sense of like we have energy, we feel better, but it's not a true energy. It's the same kind of energy that you get, say, like if you ingest cocaine or have a cup of coffee. It's a
Mm.
false energy that is depleting your body's energy reserves. It's depleting your body's vitality by forcing it to address a poison.
Got it. Yeah, exactly. So how do we then explain to people how the body acts on all things that comes into it? Like, for instance, like you were saying, like, for instance, even fruit or what we call living foods can still be looked at as inert and dead because them of themselves, they're not
Yeah.
really creating life within us. It's the body and the tissues and the assimilation process that extracts the things out of it to create the cells and the life. So how do we explain that to people because they often think, for instance, oh, if I take, I don't know, some kind of vitamin C, it'll help me this way, or, so on and so forth.
Yeah. Well, we have that myth like food is medicine.
Mm,
So, people always think like, oh, well, I could, medicine is bad, but if I treat food like medicine, then, my health will improve. And it's just it's a bit of just a misunderstanding of how the processes work because first of all, medicine is poison. By definition, medicine is poison. So we don't want our food to be medicine because we don't want our food to be poison. We want our food to be the appropriate building blocks to build a healthy body that is properly structured and properly running. And so food that is appropriate for our physiology, so our fruits, our salad greens, our nuts, and our seeds, they are easy to digest. They leave no waste matter behind. So there's nothing for the body to clean up afterwards. They're easy to assimilate materials. The materials are in their appropriate usable form. For example, protein. The human body needs amino acids. Amino acids are found in fruits and vegetables. Amino acids are what the body turns into human proteins. So if we eat, say, like chicken, where it's a what they call a complete protein, what it really is it's a bunch of amino acids that have been assembled into chicken proteins.
mm,
And then, the chicken uses that to do chicken things. But we are not chickens. So we don't get any benefit from that chicken protein because we can't use or assimilate it. So what we have to
exactly.
do is if we put into our body a piece of chicken, we have to break that down, break
Yeah.
all those amino acid bonds down. So we're using all this energy to break this food apart in order to get just a tiny bit of usable amino acids. And then, our body reuses 75% of our amino acids every day.
Mm,
So the
mm.
amount of protein that we actually
It's
need is
very little.
very, very small,
Yes.
very small. But we need it in the form of amino acids so that it's actually usable. Every time we have to convert something from an unusable product into a usable product, we're losing energy, we're losing vitality, we're wasting resources. So as far as like how the body works on food is like, you can think of it as like, okay, you take a bite of the apple, you chew the apple, you swallow the apple, your stomach crushes the apple, moving through the digestive tract, it is broken down further by the bacteria in your digestive tract. So every step of the way, the apple isn't doing anything. The apple is just a material that's being worked on by the body
Mm,
rather than the apple taking action.
mhm.
But a lot of times we get this idea. I think like cilantro,
Yeah.
chelation, or however you pronounce it.
Yeah.
Um, that's one of the ones that's like the biggest myth I think that floats around through the
The
through
heavy
the
metals and all this.
yeah, and so it's like this, this idea that like you're going to ingest something that's an irritant. This cilantro is an irritant.
Yeah.
So you're going to ingest something that's an irritant that burns your stomach and that hurts your body, but it's going to magically float all the way up to your brain and pull out heavy metals from here while never being able to exit the stomach. It's going to somehow float up here and it's going to pull all these heavy metals and then help your body eliminate them. And that's just simply not true. It's not reasonable even to think. Because our stomach is actually outside of our body. So if you think about it, like your digestive tract is a tube that runs all the way through your body from top to bottom.
It's like the
And
outside
it's
inside, huh?
yeah, it's the outside inside. Exactly. It's like a donut hole, right? Your donut hole is part of your body, but it's on the outside. And so when you put food into your body, the food itself never actually makes it into the body. What
Mm,
makes it into the body is what the bacteria breaks down and
mm.
then carries through the mucous membranes into the actual body cavity. So everything goes into the digestive tract, and then the bacteria decides what part stays in the waste and what part comes into the body. So if we're eating something like cilantro, it's going into the stomach, it's going into the digestive tract, and then the body is deciding if any of it is usable, which it does, it says no, and it creates loose stool in order to rush it out because it's irritating. And so at no point is that cilantro floating through your bloodstream, getting up to your brain, pulling out any heavy metals, and then hitchhiking them back down and out again. But that's the
Conception.
narrative, right? That's the
Yeah.
narrative that that theory, and it's based on like um there's like in vivo versus ex vivo. So it's like in
Hmm.
the body versus outside the body.
Hmm.
And so a lot of scientific experiments are like, we take cilantro and we put heavy metal in the water, and we put the cilantro in the water, and then the heavy metal starts to move towards the cilantro.
Oh, I
And
see.
so they're right. And so they're like, okay, if this happens in water, therefore it must somehow
Happen in the
happen
body.
inside the
Yeah,
body. Yeah. And so that's how these type of things like get
I see.
misconstrued, is that that it's you're taking an ex vivo study, something outside the body, and you're trying to equate it to how things would operate inside the body with a much more
Preposterous.
complicated system.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like if you put like if you were drinking like colloidal silver, which is a heavy metal poison,
Yeah.
and then you put
Oh
some
God.
cilantro in your water, then maybe the cilantro would attract the colloidal silver at that point in your stomach, but
Hmm.
it's not going to help like with the with the colloidal silver that your body's already absorbed and is sitting in your tissues, because it's very, very hard for the body to eliminate that because it's a heavy metal, of course. Um, so yeah, it's a little bit, it's
Yeah.
just, and we see that all the time with science is like, uh, we're always fed the headlines, and most people aren't really interested in sitting
Diving
and
deep.
looking at the science, yeah,
Yes.
or looking at how was the study, formulated, what was the process that they went through, and a lot of people just aren't particularly science minded in their day-to-day life, so they're not even going to sit there and read it. Even if they did read the study, they might not think through like,
Yes.
does this process make sense? And so, but when you do step back and you start to look at it, you realize how many of these studies are just like that. It's just, they're just funded in order to sell something. And
Mm.
so they're set up in a way to get the best results, to be able to have a headline, because that's really all it is. It's like clinical study goes to the media runs with a headline. They don't run with the facts of the study. It's just
Mm.
uh like I
The breaking news,
I'm
new found something.
yeah, and that's why, like, it's like, I don't know if you guys remember from like the 90s, it was like, eggs are good for you, eggs are bad for you, eggs are good for you, eggs are bad for you. It
Or
was like
stalks,
this
right?
back. Yeah, yeah. Coffee's another one. Like, depending, coffee is really interesting because if you look politically,
Hmm.
left-leaning papers push their people onto coffee.
Oh, is it?
Right-leaning,
Oh.
yeah, I just stumbled upon this like a few weeks ago because I was talking to somebody who is very politically brainwashed,
Oh, gee.
and they were like, oh yeah, coffee is wonderful for you. It's got all these health benefits. And I'm like, where are you reading this? Because
Ah.
that is not science. And so I started to kind of just like go through like the different articles that were out there that were promoting this idea. And it was like
Hmm.
all of these left-leaning um websites were all like, yeah, coffee is good for you, because they want their people like really anxious and amped up.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's
Anxiety,
yeah.
like,
Yeah. Well, and that's, fear is the game, right? It's the politics is all just about keeping the masses in fear so that
and
we're not rising
confusion.
up against them. Yeah.
Okay, so that, gosh, there's so many ways to dive into. I don't know which way, but let's just quickly, since you bring up politics, Maha, make America healthy again, right? So with
Mhm.
RFK, he sounds so great. He's gonna eliminate seed oils, blah blah blah. But here he is, never mentioning natural hygiene. Like he's talking about the different kinds
Yeah.
of jabs, and and they're talking ivermectin and all these crazy things. What is this?
Mhm.
What is all this in your
Yeah.
opinion? How do you see this?
Yeah, I mean, it's just the usual deception. It's like, when things go awry for the pharmaceutical industry, they will spin it. So I don't know if you
Hmm.
remember at the beginning of CV-19, there was this
Hmm.
whole ivermectin push. Well, ivermectin is a pharmaceutical drug.
Yeah,
So it was like pharmaceutical drugs are bad. Stay away from the vaccine. Stay away from the but here's a new solution for
yeah,
you, and
here's
it
the
just happens to bring
right-wing
you right back in the
solution,
back
right?
door.
This is the red
Yeah.
pill, you know? Oh
Yeah.
my.
Yeah, literal pill. Yeah, and so it's the same thing, unfortunately, with Kennedy is like he's not a we don't need to inject the body with poison ever. He's like, we want safe and effective poison
Oh my
injections.
gosh.
And
As
it's like,
if.
maybe he'll wake people up. I mean, that's like I'm an eternal optimist. So like
Hmm.
my thought is like at least maybe all of these people that were taking, 10 and 20 jabs will maybe like be awake a little bit and stop at least trying to force it on the rest of us.
Hmm.
But yeah, it's I don't have a whole lot of faith in I mean really anybody in politics. I mean when you look at it, it's like the whole world's a stage. It's all theater. These are actors. They're playing their part. Whether you're on the left or you're on the right, these are just actors. They're not actually in it for us. They're not actually in it for our health. If they were, it would be obvious. Like they would, because the left and the right doesn't matter which politician you look at. They both take funding from pharmaceutical,
Yeah.
I mean, in the millions of dollars. So that we're not getting that out of our government anytime
Hmm.
soon. It's going to be like if things change, it's going to be individuals changing their lives, showing their neighborhood, reaching out to their friends and family and their church and their community. And, that's how we're going to change things
Yeah.
because, the money and the power from the top down that controls the information flow
Oh my
is
gosh.
it's just it's mind boggling. You can't even wrap your head around how much money is put into this. Like, I remember back in 2013, and I'm sure it's probably much worse now. In 2013, there was a study of television advertising, and 75% of television advertising was pharmaceutical ads. So I mean, it's not just the ads that you see that are programming you to believe things, but whoever funds the programming, like your sitcoms and your dramas and your news, your entertainment news, um, those are whoever funds the ads for that get to dictate what is talked about. So for example, even if the news program wanted to cover something negative about a pharmaceutical drug, if your primary sponsor is the pharmaceutical industry, you can't run with that story.
Exactly.
So even where there are legitimate journalists, which is like few and far between these days, they're not capable of even really running with anything that goes against the industry. So yeah, it's
It's a shit
we
show.
got a long way to go. Yeah, we got a long way to go.
Okay, so let's see. I think I do want to touch on just because we're talking about politics and kind of like I don't know the ideas that sway the masses and stuff. Let's also get a little bit into religion just a bit. I know it's a sensitive topic for many people, but for instance, in the Bible, it talks about herbs are the healing of the nation. This is something that Sebi would constantly repeat throughout time immemorial, and so I'm kind of struggling with that one because. And one of the things that I thought was, what if the herbs are not necessarily for ingestion, but rather for the pollen creation and the cleaning of the air? Because I've also read in other books that the air used to be much cleaner, but not related to natural hygiene, but that we would be able to get lots of nutrition just by breathing, and that a lot of
Mhm.
that capacity has been taken from us through the pollution, through this and that. And also, I would like for you to comment on, for instance, like meat eating practices. Would you look at the Bible as kind of more allegorical? Like how do you interpret those things? Yeah.
Yeah. So in terms of the herbs, I'm
Hmm.
not sure exactly what the proper usage for them, but I do think that what you said there about like cleaning the air is certainly a possibility. Also, I know that there's a lot of like ritual incense and things like that. So,
Hmm.
burning it to give like
A
a nice
fragrance.
fragrance to
Yeah.
the air. When you're in worship and stuff like that. So there's certainly other possibilities. I haven't really thought a whole lot about that in terms of like what they're used for because from from my perspective, the way that I look at it is when you read the scripture, a lot of people come to you and they say, oh, yeah, yeah, scripture says that herbs heal. But scripture doesn't actually say that. If
Exactly.
you read every instance where it says, someone was healed, it says the Lord healed.
Mm,
God healed. God gave that blessing. And then, a lot of the references are to like fig trees. So, obviously fruit trees. But then, in terms of the diet, so, obviously there are some scripture like, rise, kill, and eat. And people take that as like, oh, that's a prescriptive, we should be eating all of these meats thing. When it that's not what the passage was about. If you read the passage in context, it's about his doubts of it's like we call it Christianity versus Christianity plus, right?
mm.
Like Christianity is like you understand that you are a sinful creature and you need to repent and you need to follow Jesus and that you are not capable of good works without the assistance of the Holy Spirit and without the assistance of the Lord, right? So that's like you're not signing up to do good works. You do good works because you're saved. Christianity Plus is like, I know I'm saved and all that, but I still need to like go through all of the old rituals. I need to follow the Levitical laws. I need to follow, and of course we pick and choose what Levitical laws we want to follow. We know, we're never following all of them. And it's like the law was put in place in order for us to see how flawed and sinful we are. It wasn't put in place ever to erase our sins. Like, the animal sacrifices never saved us. They were just, this is like a reminder from God of like, see, you keep having to kill animals because you keep being sinful, because you're not capable of not being sinful. So we have this, all of these ideas where people are like, oh, well, Peter, was it Peter or Paul? I can't remember.
Mm.
But he has that dream and he's like, wake, kill, and eat. And so they're like, oh, well, that means that I should eat animals. And it's the complete opposite. He's saying to him like, these are, the Gentiles are a part of this, and we need you to we need you to like stop being stuck in this religiosity that you're in and start getting yourself into this like what the spirit of Christianity is. And so what I always tell people in terms of like eating meat is it's not a salvation issue. So if you eat meat, you're not losing your salvation. If you don't eat meat, you're not eating your salvation, or you're not losing your salvation. But the scripture says you know all things are uh, for us, but not all things are good for us.
Mm.
So, just because something isn't a salvation issue doesn't mean that it's good for us. And so what I always say is, look back at our creation. So Genesis 1:29, Lord
Yeah,
created
eat
us
that
and
which
he
has
said,
seed, huh?
yeah, yeah, it's fruit and salads is basically what it says. And that's I think where some people get confused too, because some of the English translations say herbs in
Mm.
that, so it's eat the fruit and the herbs. But in that context, the word herb does not mean what we think of today as a
Yes.
medicinal herb. It actually means like a salad green,
I
like all
heard
the green
even
edible
meat.
leaves.
I heard even the word meat itself can be regarded as the meat of the fruit because we say coconut meat, for instance.
Yes. Yeah. So originally in the English, it was if you were referring to an animal meal, it was flesh meat. If you were referring to dairy foods, it was white meat. And
Mm.
then if you were just referring to a portion of food, so it could be like fruit or salad or nuts, that would just be meat. So they would always specify flesh meat. So a lot of the Hebrew words, it just means portion of food. And same with bread. A lot of the instances of where it says, give us this day our daily bread. It's not meaning specifically the loaf of Wonder Bread that we get at the grocery store.
Mm.
It's, portion of food. That's what the word means.
Mm.
And so, there is a lot of like nuance to translation, and a lot of scripture is descriptive rather than prescriptive. So in Genesis, it's prescriptive. It's I'm telling you, this is what I created you for. I created you under this diet and this, and then we can obviously confirm that with science. We observe scientifically. We say, oh yeah, we were created to be fruit eaters. And so that's an example of prescriptive scripture. And then there's examples of like descriptive scripture where it's like, okay, you know, they Jesus fed the fishermen fish. Well, they're fishermen and they're fishing. And so the food that they were accustomed to and the food that they were used to eating and the food that was available there is fish. It's not saying that fish is good or healthy for you. It's saying
Mm.
there was a mass of 5,000. This is the food that they were accustomed to. This is their culture. And, and so that's where a lot of people get confused is because they're thinking like, just because something mankind was doing is described in the Bible, that means that it is prescribed by the Bible, and it's just not. I mean, prescriptive text is very different than descriptive text.
Well, Lauren, let me ask you this then, because I think it was Matthew or someone who said that like Jesus only spake in parables. So do you think that there could be a lot of poetic implications in the Bible itself that we shouldn't be taking it so literally? Because, I don't know if you've ever heard of like the parallels between the Jesus story and then the astrological stories and like even in the ancient like other myths, like whether it's Horus, whether it's Krishna. There seem to be
Yeah, like
parallels.
Mithras and stuff.
Yeah, like it seems
Yeah,
the same story of the Son of God, the light of the world, with the 12 seasons, the 12 disciples. So it seems like an astrological story that was personified. Do you give that any credence, perhaps? And then the reason why I ask that is
yeah.
because like Jesus there's the sign of a fish, like and then
Mhm.
like Pisces, for
Pisces.
instance,
Yeah.
and different things like this. And during that time where he multiplied like 135 or something like that. So yeah, I just want to ask
Mhm.
that.
So no. So if you actually look at them from like, so for like Mithras, for example,
Hmm.
and I don't think we have time to like break it all
Yeah.
down, but if anybody actually does want to like dig into this a little bit, there's a YouTube channel called um uh Cold Case Christianity.
Hmm.
And it's like a former LA police officer, and he's like, Christian, and he went through because he was an atheist. As a cop, he was an atheist. His whole family was atheists, and he grew up like, oh, this is total woo woo. And so then he started to actually investigate it. And so he's got a great video where he breaks down each of those, like the Mithras and all of the different
Hmm.
uh
Myths.
mythologies, yeah, and how they're how like Jesus did all of these things, and then it's like, okay, well, Mithras, like one of them wasn't even born, but people say he was born a virgin. Well, it's like he wasn't actually born, he was like formed out of rock.
Huh.
Like that's not being born, right? And so it's like all these like funny little details, and then some of them it's like just completely ridiculous where it's like um there's actually no like evidence this thing even existed or this myth that was ever like in wide practice anywhere. There's one of them that it's the that's right, Iris Osiris,
Oh, yes, yes, something like
and
that.
it's the Oster. It's like supposedly like people come and say like Easter is a pagan
Hmm.
ritual, um, and that is basically there was like a
Ashtar or
I'm
something like a fertility.
Yeah, yeah.
Something like
So
that.
there was a claim that like in the I think it's like the 1500s, 1600s, somewhere around that time frame in Germany, there was a group that worshipped this Oester. It's like Oestar, I think something like that.
Huh.
Um and basically they've created this entire idea that like this is a pagan ritual off of this one instance. And so when you actually look into it and you say, okay, well, is there any credence to this? You find out that there's literally just like one notation by
Hmm.
a like a religious figure who just like wrote it down. He may have like written the wrong name down. There's like no evidence that this
I see.
ever existed other than just this one person like wrote this thing one time.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, but when you look at the evidence for Christ, it's just overwhelming that he existed. There's like eyewitness accounts. There's people who were like literally persecuting and killing Christians at that time,
Mm-mm.
and they were actively against Christians, and they detail Jesus's life, death, and resurrection exactly like the Bible details it. So there's all of these like historical references outside of the Bible that show that
The
the Bible is true,
cross-referencing.
and that
Mm.
yeah, yeah.
I mean,
Um,
I guess same with Islam too, because they mention Jesus being like a prophet or something, and I think the Jews also think Jesus was there, but he's not the Messiah, so on and so forth, and all this kind of stuff.
yeah, and that's one of the things that you see is that everywhere in the world, every other religion acknowledges Jesus Christ. And it's like there's nothing else like that anywhere
Mm.
else in, it's just every single religion acknowledges that, and some of them will say like, oh, he was a wisdom teacher, or he was just like this, smart guy, or he's a moral guy or something like that. But every single religion across the world,
Mentions him. Mm.
no, yeah, mentions Jesus Christ. I mean, you think about that, like there are religions in South America
Mm.
that mention a guy who lived in the Middle
Middle
East
East. Yeah.
2000 years ago.
Yeah.
It's like it's pretty astounding.
Mind-boggling.
And like, and I was an atheist for 25 years.
Mm.
So like for me it was just kind of, because I grew up in the public school system. So,
Mm.
same thing where we learn germ theory and we learn, evolution theory and all of this other, total nonsense. I was taught that, science killed God, and that,
Mm.
science had disproven the existence of God. And, of course, I was never given like actual examples of that science, but
Yeah.
it was just the same thing as germ theory. It's just like, this is the accepted theory, and so this is what we all believe. And don't ask questions, children. This is just what you learn.
Yeah.
And so yeah, so it's a fascinating journey for anybody who's like on the fence for it. Like, go dig in and look at the evidence, because it's really mind blowing, the stuff that they try to cover from us.
And la last question on this kind of subject is the scene Gospel of Peace, is it? Or something like that? You know, there are some of these apocryphatic or some, I don't know exactly what they're called, but texts that were so-called taken out of the Bible, for instance. And they mention like how, oh, man is not supposed to kill, the heat that we cook the food is so hot that when we ingest the food, it cooks our cells. Things that
Mhm.
are very, it sounds very close to a natural hygiene perspective. Have you seen those, or do you have any thoughts about those?
So I've heard of it. I've never read it. So I don't, yeah, I don't really, I can't speak to like personal
Okay.
experience about that. In terms of like, a lot of times people make claims that things were taken out of the Bible,
Mm-mm.
and those are pretty easy to debunk. So basically, things were included into the Bible based on certain criteria, and if it
Mm.
didn't match that criteria, then it's not, a part of the Bible. And that's something pretty easy that you can just Google, is like, how were the books of the Bible decided. So that, I'm of the of the opinion that we should read everything around. So we should, the Bible is the gospel, and the Bible, like people kind of get confused about what the Bible is, right? Like they think it's like, oh, just one big book. The Bible is four eyewitness accounts,
Mm.
and then a series, at least the New Testament. So the Old Testament is the same as like the Jewish
Do you
Torah.
think the Old Testament God is the same as the New Testament God? Or
Yes.
okay.
Yeah, because one of the most amazing things about the Bible is that Jesus is mentioned in every book of the Old Testament.
Huh.
Yeah. So that's one of the things that's like, you know, that can only happen supernaturally. So that's one of the things that kind of like blew my mind, was when I started to read the Bible, and I was like, in Genesis, there he is. In Exodus, there he is. In, on the mound with Moses, there he is. So, I mean, you're talking about thousands of years before he lived. He is written down by somebody who lived, thousands of years before he would ever exist. Um, and the Bible says, like, even in John, it says, he was there from the beginning. So literally from Genesis 1:1,
Mm.
he was there. Um, so yeah, so that's
Got it.
it's
Yeah.
pretty mind blowing stuff if you actually start
May-
to read through
Maybe we
it.
can creep out of this one with the Garden of Eden. So
Yeah.
it seems that in the Garden of Eden, there wasn't any need to be killing and eating outside the species specific diet, and perhaps
Yeah.
we could conclude that eating against your species specific diet is a sin, because to me it seems like our genetics are corroding, like our genetics are falling
Breaking
apart
down.
the more we go, deeper into a degenerative diet and
Hmm.
innovating ways. What would you say to that?
Yeah, and that's the way that I look at it is, and this is just like through my personal experience, when I eat poorly, I lose my connection.
Okay.
So, like I pray every day. I hear, from the Holy Spirit, it's something that you can physically feel and hear inside of you. And when I was eating garbage and when I was drinking alcohol and I was poisoning my body, I had no connection there.
Hmm.
But then as I went through cleaning out my body, like I said, I was an atheist. When I started on the raw food journey, I was a hardcore atheist, like agnostic atheist, like following all the atheists, like I wanted to believe there was no God because,
Like
I
Richard
wanted to
Dawkins
just,
or
yeah, yeah, like Richard Dawkins and what's his name? Sam.
Harris, something like that, right?
Yeah, I think that's it. I'm terrible at names,
Yeah,
so
me too.
um yeah. So yeah, I was following all of them for a long time. And because you want to be able to just like it's like it's just how we want to eat like junk food. We want to be
Hmm.
able to just eat junk food and have there be no consequences. I wanted there to be no consequences for anything, even though I felt bad, even though like the Bible says it's we have no excuse for not believing in God because it's written on our heart. So it's like you can go anywhere in the world and people will know without being socially programmed, as they say. You can go into the deeps of the Amazon and know that murder is wrong, rape is wrong, stealing is wrong. Like these are universal things that are
Exactly.
literally written on our heart. And so, we all want to sin and we all want to, just not have there be no consequences to that, just like we want to sin against our body. And so that's how I have kind of come to see it in terms of how we eat. Eating is a sin against your body. And, we're told that our body is the temple for the dwelling place for the Holy Spirit. So
Yeah.
like in the Jewish religion, they went to temple, and in order to go into the temple, you had to be clean. Like they had to
Mhm.
go through like you couldn't even have like a zit on your face
Oh,
and
wow.
walk through that temple door, right? And so you had to be like of pristine quality to enter the temple. And
Mm.
so when I look at it now, I'm like, well, if we no longer go to temple, but we are the temple,
Exactly. Exactly.
right? Then if our temple is not clean, how are we letting the Holy Spirit guide us? How are we letting the Holy Spirit in? And I just feel it myself when I eat clean,
Mm.
my connection there is so much stronger. And like I said, I started out, an atheist, went through all of this healing, and through that, through cleaning my body, I literally had like spiritual experiences and got that connection, and that's what actually drew me back to like reading the Bible and learning about Christianity, and then eventually becoming a Christian and all of that, because it's this very like a lot of people call it emotional detox,
Mm.
but it's really like a spiritual detox. And it's like when you start to understand the spiritual like
Implications.
realms. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like we say when people drink alcohol, we say they're battling their demons. Or if somebody has a drug addiction, they're battling their demons. Well, why do we say that? It's because when you injure your body, you're opening up gateways for demonic oppression. So
Mm.
all of those dark spirits that are part of this world that we live in have power over you. So the more you're injuring your body, the more power they have over you. The more you close that down.
Yeah, your spirit is weak, so now things can kind of sway you in some sense.
Yeah, exactly. And like even like some certain like mental health conditions like bipolar and schizophrenia
Yeah.
have been shown to like when people become Christians, they no longer are schizophrenic.
Oh,
Like
wow.
they Yeah, so there's a lot of like if you look at like Christian testimonials, there's a lot of testimonials for like schizophrenia and for like bipolar and similar
Mm.
conditions, because it's like where are all of those dark thoughts coming from? Like
Mm.
when they say they have voices in their head,
Yeah.
what are those voices?
Coming from somewhere, right?
Right? They're coming from somewhere.
Yeah,
So,
I've heard
to
something
me,
like just holding the word Jesus in your mouth just like immediately scares away so many of these like paranormal type weird evil kind of energy. Just that word alone is just so powerful. I've heard that from certain people. So that's interesting to note.
yeah, I've heard like ghost hunters and stuff like that, like people that say that they're chasing like paranormal or ghosts or whatever. I think what we think of as ghosts, and I used to be really into like ghost hunting and
Oh yeah.
not I mean not like I was actually out there doing it, but like I used to love to watch like those shows about all that
Ghostbusters.
stuff. Yeah, or like unsolved mysteries, like where
Yeah.
they cover like the different like spiritual things. And now like when I look at it, I'm like, it makes so much more sense that it's just demonic entities, and those
Mm.
demonic entities are trying to influence this world because it's misery loves company, and they
Yeah.
want to pull you back down. So like why do they attach themselves to like people who are alcoholics, people who are drug addicts? It's like they want to keep you in misery because they want to keep you in sin so that you don't accept heaven,
Mm.
right? So it's like, even if you think about it in terms of like this world, like how, like, when you eat properly and you feed your body properly, it's like you're reaching
Yeah.
heaven. Like your body feels so good, your mind feels so good, you're reaching that joy and that, peace, that internal like calmness. Whereas when you're on drugs and alcohol and, junk food, you have this inner hell, you have this inner
Yes.
turmoil, this burning, this discomfort. So like even if you just look at it that way, it's like it's such a like juxtaposition of
Yeah, I'd like
you
to
know
comment on that because it's almost like the human being is an instrument, so to speak, right? And then like the more in tune you are with, the how what nature has dictated and the certain kind of cosmic laws that are there, you can play your instrument better and kind of harmonize with your surroundings and create a more how do you say, peaceful environment. But the opposite is, directly true. The more out of tune the instrument is, it's just a horrible cacophonous disaster.
yeah, like chaos.
Yeah.
Yeah. And one of the things that I think is universal after like helping, like, so obviously like I went through this experience myself of like healing my body from years of abusing it to to actually getting back to like a state of health, and then helping thousands and thousands of people now. One of the experiences that I hear from them a lot is like this shedding of toxic people
Mm.
or toxic situations. Like,
Yeah,
I was
family
working this
members often.
job. Yeah, yeah, family members, friends that you thought were friends but weren't really friends. In jobs, people will eat badly and not, abuse their body, and then they'll get stuck in this rut of this terrible job that absolutely is just like soul crushing.
Yeah.
And what I see is like people, when people change their diet and they correct like these conditions, they start to go through a period where it's a little bit lonely because you're shedding all of these people. All
Yes.
these people you thought were your friends are suddenly turning against you because you're actually getting healthy. But then what happens is one by one, you start to attract new people into your life that actually are there to support you, to build you up, to be like a positive influence in your life. And you start to like find your community and, or, maybe find your church or whatever that may be, like your local support system,
Mm.
and you start to attract people into your life that are actually there to help you have a better life and to grow a better life. And the same thing with, I see people all the time, is like I was working this terrible job, and then I corrected my diet and I started to like get confidence in myself enough to like go out and start a business, or they ran with something they were passionate about, or they changed careers, or they went back to school, and I just see that so often is people, like, it's not just when you correct your diet, it's not just a shedding of like the internal disease conditions, but it's like a shedding of
Everything.
even like our external
Yeah.
disease conditions of like lifestyle, or our lifestyle toxicity. We move to like minimalist houses, and we buy farms, and we move out to the country and out of the cities, and we you know get out of debt, and we it's just it just goes on and on and
Yeah.
on.
Yeah, it's all interrelated, right? Just like with the body, you can't say one part of the body or one cell of the body is different from like the other side of the body. And you were kind of getting into science there before, and how do you say? their short-sighted conclusions of the body. And it reminded me of, a passage I'm reading right now of how there's like trillions of cells, right? And
Mhm.
in each cell there's like, I don't know, like thousands of different organelles within each cell, and they're all working in conjunction harmoniously. And we're
Yeah.
here just breathing, spacing out, and there's there's not even a
It's
thought.
like an orchestra inside
Yeah.
you, like you were saying about like like a musical
Yes.
instrument. It's like if the whole orchestra is in tune and together, versus when we're sick, sometimes our orchestra sounds like a third grade band.
Yeah. And here we are trying to develop like methods of if we need to take herbs or we need to do this kind of solution of antibiotics or
Mhm.
quinine is the answer or whatever the next new thing is. And it's just so it's like leave the dang intelligence alone. Like you don't even have to
Yeah.
do the thinking. It's already done for you. So why are you getting in the way? I mean, the word fast itself is so ironic because you're doing absolutely nothing. You're slowing down all of the processes of daily life of what I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, this task, that task, and suddenly
Yeah.
the body accomplishes all these tasks at God's speed. So it's just interesting
Hmm.
how that works.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
But
It's
anyhow,
just
you were talking about addicts, and so this reminded me of a question from my friend, and he was saying something like, I was talking to him about natural hygiene and how, people really should, drop what they're doing, and he was saying like, what about a heroin addict? A heroin addict is super, he needs his supply, so on and so forth, and if he stops that immediately, he'll go through withdrawal and he may die. And so I said, you know what? I'm not too sure about that. I'm going to ask Lauren. And I said, I think that if he's on a natural hygienic diet, the chances are his body is probably going to be okay. What would your response be?
Yeah, so I actually have personal experience with this. My brother is a long-term heroin addict.
Hmm.
And so he's, it's I think like addiction detox is one of the greatest ways to prove natural hygiene because
Hmm.
we all know that when somebody comes off of a poison, they go through detox, and what is that detox? Cold and flu symptoms. They
Hmm.
vomit, they get mucus in the it's so it's like that right there actually just proves natural hygiene.
Hmm.
But in terms of people dying from coming off of things, I mean, it wouldn't be them dying from coming off the poison.
Hmm.
It could be that concurrently their body has become so damaged
Yes.
by the product that they happen to die. But it wouldn't be because the body is being, is having the poison withdrawn from it.
Hmm.
The reason that addicts go back to the drug is because healing is discomfort.
Yes.
So when if we have a cold, if we have a flu, that's healing. That's not fun. It's not enjoyable to go through. So, they want to go back to that, you want to stimulate. You want to get out of the cleaning process and stimulate. So the body is never going to harm the body. Do people sometimes die because they've spent 20 or 30 years putting poison into their body? Yeah, of course. And we never know when a person's going to die from the damage that they've
Hmm.
done.
Hmm.
But in terms of like the actual detox processes killing somebody, that's just not biologically possible. The body has a mandate to survive. That's a
Yes.
biological law to
Yeah.
survive. So the body is always doing everything in its power to try to survive. But if we're poisoning it, and I think sometimes too is what happens a lot of times, in those cases, and obviously I don't have like medical records in front of me. If we'd have to like look specifically at individual cases. But what I do know from my personal experience is that a lot of times when people are going through these detox facilities, they're not coming off the drugs onto natural hygiene. They're coming off the drugs like, my brother, when he went through detox, it was like, okay, first they put him on methadone, which is another poison. Then they, encourage them to do things like smoke cigarettes. They've got like smoking lounges and all of that for them because, gosh forbid we just quit the addiction altogether. No, we got to trade our addiction for another addiction. Then a lot of addicts also gravitate towards like junk food, candy, like sugary snacks. So one of the things my
Hmm.
brother went every time he went through a detox and failed, it was the same pattern of like I go to the detox facility, I go through the sick, okay, it's 3 days of misery and then I'm fine. And then but then I'm like trading my addiction for cigarettes. Now I'm doing cigarettes or vaping, and then I'm eating junk food, and he eats like no real nutrition. And so I had, after like a couple of rounds of this, I've talked to my brother because I didn't know, but I had moved out of the house when my brother first started
Mm.
down this path. And so I, like the first several rounds of rehab, I never even knew. Nobody in my family ever bothered to tell me. I was like living several hours away and just, didn't have any information about it. But when I found out about it, I started doing some research into it. I found that there was like most drug rehabs have like a 5 to 10% success rate.
Oh,
There is a nutrition based program. I think it was either in Maryland or Virginia that
mm.
had like a 95% success rate
Wow.
because they were teaching people when they come off the drugs to eat healthy and to maintain proper like proper body conditions in order
Mm.
to not be triggered to go back. Because a lot of times when people are addicted to these drugs, they're self-medicating for some sort of condition that they have. So
Mm.
a lot of times it's like kids are put on Ritalin or Adderall, and then that leads them to the path of like the tons of heroin addicts. I know when the high school that I went to, um, my generation, my year wasn't too bad, but the like next like 4 or 5 years after following me, there was a huge influx of heroin problems and like cocaine addictions.
Mm.
And one of the things that I saw personally within my experience was the younger generation was being put on the Ritalin and the Adderall and all these pharmaceutical drugs like it was candy. I mean, they were just doling it out. It was candy. And for me, like I had ADHD. So, and my brother did too, but I never took drugs for it. My
Mm.
brother was put on Ritalin at age 5. And you could see right away his personality change. It was very
Dark, kind
striking.
of numbing, kind of, right?
Yes. Yeah, very like a darkness. Like I would say like a black cloud came over him, or like now I would almost call it like a demonic presence.
Mm.
It's like it's just this oppression. This oppression came over him. Um, but so he struggled his whole life with like wanting to, you get addicted to the Ritalin and then you get it and then you just keep feeding that addiction through your whole life.
Mm.
And people do the same thing with cigarettes, cigarettes, and then you do alcohol and then you do cocaine. And you just keep trying to fight, you just keep going down the wrong path because you don't know what the right path is.
Yeah.
And it's like, they're trying to seek that same joy that we get, like that same high feeling that we get from not injuring our body, but they just don't know how to get there because they from birth,
Yes.
you're put on formula which injures your body, and then you're fed wheat cereals that injure your body, and then you're force fed meat that injures your body. And so everywhere from literally before they can even talk, they're put in this state of pain. But I think that we have like this inherent knowing that there's like a better way. Like I
Yes.
know, at least for me, when I was sick, I went through this process of like, okay, I don't know how to get there, but I know I'm not supposed to just be suffering day in, day
Exactly.
out and in pain. And so I think a lot of people who chase drugs, I think they're chasing that like same joy that we have through the
Mm.
fruit and the food,
But it's like
but
a
they
fleeting
don't know how to get
artificial.
there.
Mm.
Yeah, exactly. It's an empty, solution. It's a short-term gain, long-term pain. Whereas what we're going through is short-term pain to get
Yes.
to the long-term gain.
Yes. And that same sensation is what led me to you, which is funny, and natural hygiene in general, because I felt like there was something else, even with the alkaline electric Dr. Sebi stuff, even them saying some cooked foods are okay as long as it's non-hybrid, so on and so forth. Just something
Yeah.
didn't seem right. But I've recently been getting in conversation with a close friend about this device too. This is, I think, one of the biggest addictions and distractions out there,
Yes.
and it just seems like our dopamine centers have been completely corrupted. So we're just
Yeah.
constantly searching for one quick dopamine hit, one quick hit there, one quick dopamine here. And so it just leads you to bad content. It leads you to drugs. It leads you to so on and so forth. So just like you said, which is the exact same conclusion I came to, is we've never been in an environment where we get the right food, the right kind of natural surroundings, the right kind of
Mhm.
family, how do you say, connections.
Support or yeah,
Yeah, the
connections.
the
Yeah.
the, the right kinds of prerequisite to just have the right dopamine come in, when there's a correct fulfillment of living. So yeah, that's been a huge thing on my mind is these things themselves, I think, is ruining men. I mean, I'm here in Korea right now, right? And when I ride the subway, for instance, I see everyone is on this. I mean, I'm on this too because I'm looking at
Yeah.
hygiene books, but it's just when I look like towards my side, like right and left, everyone's just so you might as well be a robot. It's like all these trillions and of cells that are of intelligence and godlike capacity and gift, this miraculous happenings between our temples, right, is reduced to this algorithm, which is
Yeah.
absolutely mind-boggling. And actually, I've been traveling to different fasting centers, Lauren, in Korea, because I want to see what Korea is doing right, wrong, so on and so forth. And
Yeah.
every single one is totally corrupted. Every single one has some kind of a remedy where it's like, oh, they're going to take something to blast your germs in your body. It has to just kill all the parasites before you fast. Because if you don't do these things, the parasite's going to make holes in your system. Or,
Oh,
you know,
geez.
yeah, or honey solution or a natural farmer I'm very close to always says his vinegar is the best because the soil that he's created these products are with no pesticide and nothing. So those
Yeah.
bacteria and those microorganisms create the best vinegar, and this vinegar will cure anything in 3 days.
Oh,
So
and isn't it funny? There's a little juxtaposition there. Is like you've got the guys killing all the parasites, and then you've got the guys doing the vinegar because of all the good bacteria.
yeah,
It's like it's so mixed up. It's so like they don't even see within their own like craziness how
yes.
crazy their craziness is. Yeah,
And
that's
then
just
like
funny.
yeah, so in these fasting centers, they do a soak fast or whatever, and then they come right off and do the cooked foods. It's just a normal,
Yeah.
business as usual, right? So everywhere I look, Lauren, it is just, it's
Yeah.
just
And
utmost.
that's sad because it's dangerous. Like if you, especially if you're doing a longer fast, like if you just do a couple days of fasting and then you go back to cooked food, your body hasn't had time to release all those mucuses, the
Mm,
mucoid plaques that build up in the digestive tract to protect it from the
mm.
cooked foods. But if you've done like a 30-day fast and your body has shed a bunch of that mucus, and then you go back to cooked foods,
Oh
you can
gosh.
do pretty serious damage to your digestive tract. Like you can create scar tissue, injuries. And of course there's not very many cases of people dying from fasting, but there is a couple where they ate things like eggs, steak, potatoes after, and they didn't die from the fast, of course, but they died from the severe constipation that occurred
Wow.
from the way that they
The
broke the
refeeding,
fast.
huh? Wow.
Yeah, yeah. And so that's kind of scary that there's fasting centers that are then and unfortunately, I don't know if this is the same in Korea, but I know in a lot of Asian cultures, they have like this fear of raw food and like through like the traditional Chinese medicine or like the
Mm,
Ayurvedic, they have like the hot, like you need certain hot
yes.
things and
Yeah.
and unfortunately that's like very injurious to the body.
Yes.
So uh yeah,
Yeah, they have
that's
this thing
that's
called, it's like something like 8 or 16 different types of people or something. And some people are better with cold food, some people are with hot food, some people are better with meat. And some people can't take meat
yeah.
and need certain kind of vegetables, root vegetables for some. And nothing but everything but
And
natural
it's
living.
like nothing new under the sun, right? Because that's like the
Yeah.
blood type diet in the US, right? And the blood type diet, obviously, that's been completely debunked. It was like debunked like many years ago. But it's like everywhere you look, if you go around the world, it's always the same lies, just repeated in different ways. And and I see that all the time on like Facebook, responding to people's comments, and there's always at least one person that says everybody's unique and we all
Oh,
need different diets. And it's like, we're all humans. But that's the division. That's like the political division too. It's
yes.
like when you
The
say like,
divide and
oh, like
conquer.
black and white people.
Yeah.
No. there's no different races. There aren't black races and white races. There's the human race. There's
Yes.
literally like we all come from Adam and Eve. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so like and then when you start to think about it, you're like, okay, so why don't we have like blue-eyed race and green-eyed race and brown-eyed race? Or why don't we have the blonde hairs versus the brown hairs? It's just so absurd. But that's what it is. It's just like division. Everything's about division. So,
Lauren, do you think there is some credence to the fact that so for instance, the natural hygiene diet is the right way, right? Is obviously the cornerstone. But for instance, do you think that it's possible that let's say a black man will or a so-called African American or whatever you want to call all these different kinds of names, right? But that
mhm.
kind of person will actually fare worse than a so-called white person on a meat or milk diet that it's possible that, for instance, like a Caucasian evolved more, or not evolved, that's a kind of poor word, but you know what I'm saying, right? Like kind of micro
Yeah.
adjusted to this colder, less sun environment and can take milk and meats better, but obviously it's still degenerative to his system. Is that possible to conclude? Do you think?
So no. So and that's funny because that argument is based on the false science of evolution, so this
Mm,
false idea that we've evolved out of things.
mhm.
And that's, it's just another one of those theories like germ theory where it's just there's no evidence to support it, but we just, force it upon people and if you force it on children young enough, you just accept it and you never look into it and you never, read any books about it. I literally have like this half of my is all on like the false science of
Oh,
evolution.
really?
Yeah. I mean, there's so many books on it. There's so much information on it. It's wonderful. But yeah, it's the same idea of like, uh, what we're seeing is degeneration, and then we're calling it evolution. So it's like, the
Okay.
body is breaking down, and then we're
Hmm.
saying, oh yeah, they evolved into this. It's like, no, they've gotten weaker. Their body is more
Hmm.
damaged. It's not that they're, they haven't improved in any way. And so there's no actual there's no like single evidence of anything evolving into something else like that, just like if there was evolution, we would be seeing it in like real time of different stages of this evolved into this, we'd be able to see that like currently today. But that's a whole rabbit hole.
Yeah,
That's
in
I don't
itself.
Yeah, I don't feel qualified to lecture on that topic at this point. That's like a lot of information, but there's tons of great like videos out there for people to look into.
Hmm.
um there's a Michael Behe is a really good one to look up, like the mousetrap problem.
Hmm.
uh it's like, or like the human eye, like how did something as complicated and as intricate as the human eye evolve? Like, it's just impossible because you'd have
Yeah.
to have all of these intricate individual parts having come together all at the same time to form, this eye. So yeah, that's a
And a
whole
whole
thing.
other
But
rabbit
yeah,
hole to itself. But
yeah.
you know, um,
Um,
So
but
yeah,
sorry, is
go ahead.
yeah,
Sorry.
go ahead.
That,
Yeah, I was just trying to get back to your question. So yeah, I think what was your question exactly? It was like, what was the
I had many questions,
I
Lauren.
can't
Which
remember.
was the
Yeah.
question?
Oh, well, you were saying about evolution. Oh, about whether like somebody of like a
Oh
darker
yes.
skin complexion might
Mhm.
do better, fare better on a different diet. So again, internally our physiology is exactly the same. Our
Hmm.
melanin of our skin has absolutely no effect on our physiology, just like our eye color has no effect on our physiology, our hair color has no effect on our physiology. These are just traits that make us unique individuals. um but there's no like there isn't even really a dividing line, like what makes a person black versus, I mean, obviously, like I would be considered white even though I'm very clearly pink. I
Yeah,
mean,
exactly.
like like there's not a lot of white in me, but it's just kind of an absurdity, and it's
Yes.
just another way that they distract people because like it's this
It's like a
it's this
categorization, just like with disease, right? They make all these different fanciful this side, that
yeah.
side, and then you can just get caught up in it, kind of a thing.
Yeah, and it's labels. And even if you look at, like, since we started this conversation on politics, let's bring it full circle. It's like if you
Yeah.
look at the politics of, identity politics of, you're, pro this or you're anti that. And if you run into somebody that, like, you're against them, and it's like, and it's in real life, like most of us are just trying to, like, live our lives and
Yes.
just, like, go
Survive.
about our business, and, like, we just don't want people, like, hurting children or hurting animals, and just, like we all agree on these, like, core principles,
Basic
but they
principles.
use yeah, they use these labels to divide and conquer, right? It's united we stand, divided we fall. And, so it's like, if you're black or you're white, then, you're divided. If you're Asian or you're Mexican or whatever, I don't know, you're divided. We're going to divide on nationality. We're going to divide on the color of our skin, but not the color of our hair or eyes. We're going to divide on our disease labels. People go in and they get these disease labels and they become identified with it, and they're like, I am a survivor of this thing, and it's like it becomes ingrained into their personality, and then they don't actually want to learn how to heal because
Yeah.
it becomes this thing that gets them attention. It becomes this thing
Yes.
that is like their cross to bear.
It's a
Like,
crutch.
yeah, and it's an identity label, and unfortunately, we're kind of wired that way. Like, we're
Yes.
wired to be success. Even like if you want to like be successful or be a failure, like you're kind of wired that way. Like if your family grew up poor, you're more likely to identify as a poor person and
Mm.
not take the actions of a rich person. If you grew
Mm.
up rich, you're more likely to identify as rich and continue in those habits and behaviors that will facilitate you having a successful business, or building wealth, or saving money. A lot of that is just the labels that we put upon ourselves. And
Mm.
I mean, even sometimes labels can be good. Like, if you label yourself as a vegan, and then that, makes you change your lifestyle in order to, not harm animals, that could be argued as being good. But then even that same label could then be construed as negative too, because, like, if you become like one of these radical, me against the world, very toxic kind of vegan personas, then you're going to be alienating everyone instead of bringing them into you. So it's like you're
Mm.
going to be, if you every time you're out there, like, screaming at people because they don't believe in the same way you do, because they don't have the same perspective as you do, like you're pushing people away instead of gathering them in towards you
Inclusively.
to
Yes.
help. Yeah, and it's like we can influence when we're pulling people in. We do not influence when we push people away. Like,
Mm.
if somebody yelled at me about being vegan, I never would have become vegan. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Like, if somebody was like, "Oh, you're a horrible person for eating meat," I would just be like, "Okay, bye."
Yeah.
But, like, but the way that I learned about it was like, "Oh, well, have you seen what happens to these cows when here, would you watch this video?" Oh, wow, I don't agree with that. Now I'm a vegan because I don't agree with that thing happening. And so, like, labels can be really powerful,
Mm.
unfortunately.
Or
And
they can
I think
cause war.
yeah. I mean, it's, division, like the wars of religions and things like that. It's, that all of that is, it's just and I think that the people in power understand that very well.
Yes.
Um, like, was it, I think Edward Bernanke, so the propaganda, like,
Bernays?
he even
I don't know. Something like that. Yeah.
Bernays. Yeah,
Something like that.
like I said, I'm terrible at names, so I'm sorry for anybody who's trying to follow my name dropping. Yeah, don't follow my name dropping. But yeah, there's the book, Propaganda. I forget what the author's name is, but probably something like that. Um, or that could just be like a random, like, movie star, and I've just pulled like a totally random name out of nowhere. Um, but, these are the people in power, and they recognize that they can propagandize us. They
Yes.
can manipulate us by, having us identify with things,
Mm.
and then those identities drive us. And
Consume
so,
us. Yeah.
yeah. And I think eating meat, like being masculine for men, is like a
Oh,
big
my
identity
goodness.
thing. And it's like, eating meat causes heart disease, which arguably makes you weak. It causes you to be fat, which arguably makes you weak. It causes you to die of kidney failure. It causes erectile dysfunction. How less manly can you get than that? And yet here we are like, oh man, meat, yes, strong,
Macho, yeah.
yes, macho. It's just like but that isn't a powerful, powerful identity control.
Yes.
And that will, that will sway people and that will keep people stuck in the disease state. And so, I look around all the time at these labels that just drive all of this like negative results for people,
Mm.
you know.
Well, let me ask you this, Lauren. Then, for someone, let's say, random person comes up to you and says, "We must eat a balanced diet. I take all these supplements. I read all these scientific studies. Where do you begin, from your experience to dissolve this identity and get them down to the most simplest of truths? Where would you start?"
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the first thing I do, and it's funny because that particular marketing comes up a lot in our dog group because
Oh,
that's how they sell kibble, right? Dog kibble is balanced and scientifically formulated, made by nutrition
yeah,
experts, right?
proven formula.
Yeah, yeah, is this proven formula, proven to make you money.
Yeah.
Uh, so what I usually do is first I ask people, well, what do you think balanced means?
Hmm.
Right? Do you think, because a lot of times people don't really know. They don't really have any idea. It just is that's their excuse for eating junk food is like, I have to eat balanced and so I can eat, yeah, I can eat this because it's got some, oh, I looked at the nutrition label, it's got some vitamin A and I don't think
Yeah.
I got vitamin A in it.
There's
And
a
yet
piece of
today,
salad, there's a piece of
yeah,
meat, there's some wheat, they got
yeah.
everything. The
Yeah,
tomato.
it's totally. Yeah, and so the first thing I try to do is just ask people like, what do you think balanced really means? Because for different people, it'll be different things. And then you kind of have to break down like, okay, well, is like, the vitamins. Okay, well, why would you want to get your unusable vitamins in inorganic form and poison your body with a pill when
Mm.
you could get, vitamin K from your lettuce greens, vitamin C from your oranges, and then you kind of have to explain to people the difference between organic and inorganic. So the body can use organic minerals. Organic minerals are those that are found in plants and they have been converted by the plant into a usable form. Inorganic is what's found in supplements. They're rocks. We are not rockivores. We cannot eat rocks. So those are unusable and they get deposited into our tissues and they make our body harden over time. And so that's why, when you see like ALS and when old people start to like crunch in on
Punch over.
themselves and
Yeah.
stiffen up and all, get arthritis in their joints and everything like that. That's all those inorganic minerals that they've been putting into their body for their lifetime. Um, and then I'll
And
start talking to
Lauren,
people
sorry to
about like,
interrupt you, but maybe real quick, you should also add in the organic minerals that have been processed too, as well, right?
oh yeah, like the powders and stuff like
Mm.
that.
Mm.
Yeah, and it's when you have a vitamin like that, like a superfood green powder type product, is it organic minerals? Yeah, absolutely. Are they potentially usable? Yeah, absolutely. But what's missing? What's missing from the whole food? So, one of the key essentials to health is hydration. Now, if you're desiccating, you're drying out your vitamin source, then you're removing its water content. You're
Mm.
also removing its fiber content.
Mm.
So, our bowels are a smooth muscle that requires lots of bulk in order to contract properly to move
Ah,
food through. Like we
just
have
gotta
these
squeeze.
big, long,
Mm.
twisting bowels that have a long way to go because fruit, they want the body is, fruit is non-toxic and so it can move slowly through the system and get maximum nutrition out of it. But like something like a piece of meat or like a vitamin pill is toxic. And so we need that fiber to push that out of the body as rapidly as possible. And if we're putting in something that is devoid of fiber, then we're neglecting a major need of health. And
Mm.
so whether we're doing that with a vitamin supplement or with like just eating the wrong types of foods or even eating something like for example sweet potatoes. Sweet potato is a vegetable. You would think okay, it's a plant-based substance then we should be able to utilize it. But when we cook it, we break down a lot of the indigestible fibers and
Mm.
so then it becomes this sludge that gets
Yeah.
clogged up in our digestive tract and moves very slowly and makes, creates constipation. And then all the fruit that we eat behind it gets backed up and creates gas. And then that creates fermentation, which creates alcohol, which then poisons the body. And so
Yeah.
you have like this whole like carry through effect. So, yeah. So in terms of like the organic supplements, you're still poisoning your body because you're stealing its water content in order to move that dry, desiccated product through.
Mm,
And same thing for dog kibble. It's like if you give a dog kibble, who cares if it's balanced, if it's dehydrating them, you know? So it's like, sometimes you have to ask a lot of questions about like what the person's belief system is around that particular marketing term.
mm.
And then we have to address each individual like false
Propaganda
understanding.
idea, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And the thing is,
Wow.
most people have like a very surface level understanding of nutrition. It's they just understand the headlines. It's just like, okay, well, the news is, the entertainment news channel that I watch keeps telling me that, lycopene is good for me and lycopene is in cooked tomatoes, so I'm gonna eat my Prego tomato sauce. And it's like, well, lycopene might be useful, but it's only useful in its natural form, in its
Mm,
whole food form, in the amounts that nature intended it to be absorbed and utilized.
exactly.
Anything that is absorbed in excess becomes a poison.
Mm,
Even if we take in something like, okay, we know vitamin C is good for the body. If we take
mm,
in an excess of vitamin C, it becomes a poison
mhm.
because anything in excess becomes a poison. So it's like, if you're breaking down, if you're eating an orange, that orange has that vitamin C in the right balanced amount to be released slowly by, breaking the fibers down, releasing the sugar slowly, releasing the vitamins slowly, and then the body absorbs it slowly and, can utilize it slowly. And then there's no excess left over for the body to flush out. If you take a vitamin C pill, you're just taking a very, very concentrated form that the body would never find in nature in that level of concentration.
Exactly.
And so that's an excess, and an excess is always a poison.
Yeah, and that should be the first hint for people, right? That if it wasn't formulated in nature, if it's not in a whole state, how is it going to bring a whole human being? How is it going to
Yeah.
holistically, give life to the cells? And so I think it's very foolish of us to, think that we can get a shortcut and a quick fix and all of these things. Like my dad, being a doctor, will always tell me about vitamin B12. He's like, oh, you're 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 all healthy now and you're very young and you're very blah 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 blah, but soon you're gonna be very weak, blah 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 blah. And I just read in a TC Fry's Life Science Health System that the cows don't get any vitamin B12 from their grass. So how are they standing? How are they
Yeah.
how are they healthy?
Yeah. And isn't it funny, like the biggest, strongest animals, like
Yeah.
the cow and the ox, that they're all plant eaters, and here we're like looking at where the society pushes this like, meat makes you strong idea, and then you look
Okay.
around at nature and you're like giant
Gorilla,
gorillas,
yeah,
like
rhino,
just eating
elephant.
leaves.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you're just like, wait, that's something's not adding up there.
So, since we circled back to politics, let's go even further back to the chicken that you brought up. So, just to clarify for the people, when you say that when we eat chicken, we have to break it down, we have to then, make it into glucose or whatever, and then so whatever amino acids, and then we have to reabsorb the broken down chicken back into an amino acid form that we can utilize, right? So, what you're saying is that the chicken doesn't come straight like when people think, oh, I'm gonna eat lots of protein and I'm gonna get swole, like you were saying last time, swollen, inflamed.
Yeah.
You know, uh,
Yeah.
really what they're saying is I'm going to create extra stress for the body by eating a food group that's not right for me, by breaking it down into a formation, whereas a fruit would not have to be broken down to that level of inefficiency and form, and then reabsorb that into something that can be useful, right? That's what you're saying.
Yeah, so what happens is we eat the chicken, the body has to break all that down. And so first of all, the chicken, obviously humans aren't meat eaters, so we cook our food because any species on the planet that eats meat always eats it raw. And they
Yeah.
eat the bones and they eat the fur and the feathers because those are like the fiber element that's it's required. So like if you have a dog and you feed a dog cooked protein, they get cancer and, heart disease and they die
Eventually
young. And
die.
if you
Yeah.
give a yeah, and if you give a dog raw meat but with no bone, they die very quickly because it's like all the acidic, none of the alkaline. And so you have this you have this body that is made for meat, but they still can't eat cooked meat, and they can't eat the meat without the bone. And so we have these humans here eating the meat cooked without the bone. So what happens if you heat protein, it denatures the protein, and so a lot of the amino acids get damaged. So body puts all this effort into breaking down these amino acids. Most of them are damaged, so most of them just get thrown out with the waste product. The small amount that it finds that are actually still in usable form, they're probably still a little bit damaged too, which is why we end up with weak tissues when we build up on that. And this is also why, like, a lot of times you see people when they transition from, living on a sad food, or like meat-based diet for 30 or 40 years, and then they go on the raw food diet, and then they get
Mm,
really thin for a while,
mm,
and then their muscle mass comes back up again. As
mm.
like the body wants to get rid of all of that garbage
Trash.
muscle that was built
Mm.
on, yeah, it was built on trash. It was built on all of this like animal protein that was so like weak and damaged material. So it wants to pull all that out, dump that into the dumpster, and then build up with the plant-based protein. Um,
Gosh, how nice
and
would
so,
it be if we could just pop the balloon, the swollen balloon that is Joe Rogan, so that he could experience
oh
that
gosh, I
detox,
know.
and then he could
Yeah.
interview you and finally tell the people what the answer really is. That'd be great. But
I
yeah,
don't, yeah, I don't think that's ever gonna
yeah.
happen. Yeah, that would be pretty funny.
But
Um,
but anyhow, no. Just to reiterate what Lauren's saying, I just wanted to bolster her point. You can go and search this, anatomy chart for yourself, the carnivore, omnivore, or frugivore diet. And I mean, this the most simple. I'm not going to go through everything. You guys can go through it yourselves. But the most simple things, like we don't have the claws, we don't have the teeth to run after a dang animal and sink our claws into it and cut its organs apart, immobilizing it and then bite into its neck to stop its oxygen supply. Like, can you imagine doing that and eating it on the spot? And like, I mean, the acidity in the stomach, the length of the intestines. I mean, everywhere you look, the amount you can open your jaw, how carnivores and omnivores, they swallow. I mean, all of these different things immediately, the teeth, everything shows you, but it's just a
yeah.
willful ignorance. Would you not say, Lauren?
Yeah, one of the things that stands out to me, because obviously I raise dogs and cats, we rescue them and then we return them to their natural diet. And obviously the dogs are omnivores, so they eat fruit and they eat meat, and then the cats are carnivores. And one of the things that always stood out to me is the difference in our jaw structure.
Hmm.
So when a like the first thing that always freaks somebody out when they're transitioning their dog from kibble to raw food, and they're giving them this big piece of meat and the dog is just chowing down on the leg, like a big chicken leg, is the dog just like crunch, breaks through the bone, breaks through the flesh, and swallows these massive chunks. And they just,
Mhm.
anything that will fit down their throat
They swallow.
will, they'll swallow. And meanwhile, when we chew our food, we like chew it to a soup in our
Yeah.
mouth before we swallow. And if we don't, we end up with indigestion and heartburn and stomach pain and stuff like that. But the thing I always have to explain to people in the dog group is that dogs don't chew because they don't have a jaw capable of chewing. Our jaw goes around in a circle. We can masticate. Dogs have a jaw that's more like scissors. It just goes up and down, and it's
Mhm.
very, very strong bite force, so
Yeah.
they can crush and cut. And so
Yes.
they crush and cut the meat into just chunks, and then they swallow it. Whereas our jaw is very clearly, masticating. We're moving around in a circle. We can't bite into a corner of a chicken leg and just snap the bone in half
Mm.
and swallow a big giant chunk. They can because all of their digestion occurs in their stomach, and the conditions of their stomach are such that it can dissolve bone. And when you look at like the dog's stool after it's gone, after it's had a meat meal, um, what they poop out is just like white. And when it dries in the sun, you can literally step on it. It just turns to powder because they've
Mm.
turned that entire hard bone into a powder. That's how
Wow.
strong their
The
digestion is.
acidity. Mm.
Yeah, the acidity of their digestion, and just the overall structure of their digestion as well, because like all species, lions and sheep and humans, we all have hydrochloric acid in our stomach. So it's
Mm.
like the pH, like a lot of times people get confused, like, oh, the pH of the stomach acid, like that's one of the big like carnivore like marketing points these days is that they're like,
Hmm.
oh, humans and lions have the same stomach acid, so therefore we must be carnivores. And it's like it's not just the stomach acid. We all have hydrochloric acid, but it's the amount of stomach acid. It's the conditions of the stomach. It's the conditions
Hmm.
of the mouth and the jaw and the digestive tract. Lions have very short digestive tracts because meat produces ammonia. Ammonia is a very strong poison. So the
Hmm.
body has to digest it very rapidly and get it
Push it
out of the
through.
body very
Yes.
quickly.
Mm.
Whereas we have these long, twisting, 30-foot long digestive tracts that everything moves very slowly through, especially if we don't have an abundance of fiber in our diet. It
Yeah.
moves very, very slowly. And so that meat is turning into ammonia and
Yeah.
poisoning us. And so that's why when you see people go to like that keto or the carnivore diet, the first symptom that they complain about is brain fog. Is because they're
Mm.
literally they're just poisoning, they're starving their brain of sugar while poisoning their brain with ammonia. And then they get like the keto flu is another, it's really wild. And then they get like one of the biggest complaints in one of the biggest complaints in the carnivore like forums when you go onto the carnivore diet forums is like, I haven't pooped in a week, I haven't pooped in a month. And then they sit there and they try to convince people that,
Oh,
oh,
that's
it's totally
normal.
normal because you're absorbing everything. But if you look at lions or house cats, my
Yeah.
house cats poop every single day
Mm.
eating only raw meat. They're not eating kibble, they're not eating anything that's not, appropriate for them. They poop every single day. Like my dogs poop every single day. They eat meat. Lions, tigers, jaguars, they all poop. Like if we weren't meant to poop, we wouldn't have a digestive tract. We
Yeah.
wouldn't
We
have an
wouldn't have a
exit for
butthole. Yeah.
things. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, it's pretty crazy. And when you start to look at it, it just becomes so obvious. But people love good news about their bad habits. People want to be, told that their addictions are good for them. And so it's very easy to kind of mislead people in this way because people kind of, you know, they want to, like on a subconscious level, they want to be misled because I would much rather be able to eat all the potato chips and all the chocolate that I want
Yeah.
and never have a consequence to that,
Exactly.
and that's how, most people are like that. People just want to have, um, whatever their particular addiction is, whether it's like meat or dairy products or eggs or chocolate. People want to hear that good news about their bad habits.
Would you say that then for a human being it's better to cook the meat or like for instance I'm saying if you're gonna eat meat at all is it better to eat it raw?
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, cooking it, anytime you heat food, you create acrylamide, which is a
Mm.
carcinogen. It's a
Mm.
cancer-causing chemical.
Mm.
So, the higher the temperature that you heat something to, the more acrylamide is created. So, if you're gonna eat meat, yeah, you should definitely be eating it raw. You should also be eating the bones and you should be eating the fur and the feathers, just like every carnivore and every
Yeah.
omnivore does. And if you can't do that, then you should be asking yourself why you're eating this substance, because if you can't eat it in its whole natural form, then it's not a food for you. And then you got to ask yourself, well, am I eating this because I'm actually hungry, or am I eating it because I am a drug addict? And when you can recognize that, oh, this is a drug addiction, then you can actually treat it seriously. Like I tell people like this with cheese all the time
Mm.
because people are like, I can't quit the cheese. I can't quit the cheese.
Because it's
Yeah.
heroin, literally.
Yeah, because you're an opioid addict. You're addicted to the casomorphine, the opioid
Casein,
peptide.
is it?
Casomorphine is Casomorphine, I
Ah,
think. Yeah. So it's
Cassiomartin.
Casomorphine or casomorphine. Again, please apologize. I apologize
That's
for my
no,
terrible pronunciation of everything. That's
we're not a grammar
I
school
read
here.
things. Yeah, yeah. Well, I went to public school, so my grammar, my English, yeah, I'm barely fluent in English. Um, yeah. No, I pronounce it like I read a lot, but reading doesn't tell you necessarily how to
Hmm.
pronounce things. So, yeah, sometimes I say silly things, and then certain people who are much better at pronunciation say, "Lauren, what the hell did you just say?
Ah.
That is not how you pronounce it." So it's
But
okay.
anyhow, so yeah, so the meat, it's don't go, let's see, it's like a nitrogen stimulation, is that correct? And I remember hearing from like Dr. Morse that these people that crave salt and spices, it's like a weak adrenal gland, so you just need more of a stimulant to get that kick, and then you're looking, and same with the meat, it's like a again a nitrogen kind of stimulant. What is it?
Well, so meat is very high in nitrogen and
Hmm.
high in nitrates,
Hmm.
and those are just toxic substances. Um, Salt cravings are fatigue. So whenever we're fatigued, we're looking for stimulation. Since salt is a very strong stimulant,
Hmm.
we crave salt. It's really just a learned behavior. If you had never eaten salt in your entire life, but you had eaten a
Mm.
different stimulant like chocolate, like say you had never ever touched salt, you were never given salt, but you were given chocolate, then you would have chocolate cravings whenever you're tired instead of salt cravings.
Mm.
And so even like white refined sugar, like when we eat like a meat meal at night and then afterwards we're craving ice cream, well, first of all, your body is devoid of the energy producing sugar because you just ate like this heavy protein meal, this heavy fat meal with no
Yeah.
sugar, and so the body has needs energy to digest that because so that's why your body demands the sugar. But also like refined white sugar is a stimulant because
Mm.
it's rapidly released into the cells and so it
Mm.
stimulates production because basically what happens is when we consume sugar in like
Mhm.
natural form like in a fruit it's released into the blood flow very slowly, and so the cells are very calm, and everything's like just very smooth and easy for the body to
Peaceful, not
process.
irritating. Yeah.
Peaceful, yeah. And then when we eat something like a piece of cake or a cookie, you have two things that are happening. So first of all, cake and cookies they're always very high fat products. So they're
Mm.
full of butter or like some other form of fat. Um, and so if fat impairs the cell's ability to take blood or take sugar out of the blood. So
Yeah,
it
it slows
basically
it down.
clogs up the cell, the entry to the cell. So it's like you get a fat glob that just clogs the cell entry up. And so the cell can't pull in as much sugar as quickly. So you have this dip in energy because your cells aren't getting energy, and then you have this high blood sugar. So then your body starts pumping out more insulin to try to force the sugar into the cell.
Mm.
And then you all of a sudden you start to get like a spike, you get the
Mm.
spike and crash because then all of a sudden you got lots of insulin flowing and it's shoving that sugar into the cells as rapidly as it can to get it out of the blood. And so then the cells have to ramp up really high and start burning off that sugar, burning off that energy very rapidly. And so we have this. It's like a very anxiety ridden kind of energy versus
Mm.
that very calm energy of the fruit.
Mhm.
Um, and then, because of the fat content, then your sugar absorption is impaired for a while because that fat just kind of lingers around the cells.
Mm.
So that's why they say like diabetes is a disease of fat toxicity. It's the amount of fat that you're eating within your meal is going to affect your blood sugar. So even if you're
Mm.
eating like the natural hygiene diet, but you're miscombining your foods and say you have like a banana and an avocado together,
Ah,
that fat from the avocado is going to
slow
temporarily
down the
impair your
sugar.
blood sugar.
Interesting.
Yeah. And so it's not going to be as bad as if you're eating
Obviously,
like cooked
yeah.
foods all the time, but you are going to notice like a little bit of discomfort during that period
Mm. So
that you
same
ate
with
that
like
because
nuts and a sweet fruit. Same thing, right?
yeah. Yeah, like we can eat like dried fruit with nuts because they both digest very slowly, and so the sugar is
Oh,
released
that's
from the
good to
dried
know.
fruit. Yeah, but you don't want to mix, say, like nuts with a banana or an apple or grapes because that sugars in liquid form, it's going to be released much faster than a dried fruit. It's going to digest much faster, and so that fat is going to impair it in that way. So that's why if you look at the food combining charts, nuts are okay to pair with dried fruits, but they're not okay to pair with the same fruit sweet. So like if you have a raisin with a nut, fine.
Mm.
Grape with a nut, bad.
Not fine. Mm. But
Yeah.
the kind of acidic fruits, they're better, would you say? To combine with?
Yeah, acidic fruits are lower in sugar. And so they yeah, they you can pair them, and like tomato cashew is a very classic pairing. Those are fine to use together.
Got it. I was gonna say also, do you think there's any relation between grains and diabetes? Because you were saying something about fats, but isn't it also kind of like this starch kind of thing? And also like how grains, they, like fruit, the sugar will immediately start coming in at a very slow, gentle pace, but grains, it seems like it takes a long time, and then suddenly it's just a big amount
Hmm.
of sugar entering this. Is it?
Yeah, so as we said before, like anything in excess can
Hmm.
be disease causing. So like refined white sugar, if you eat lots of refined white sugar, you can stress your liver and then your liver starts producing fat in order to store all of that excess sugar. So if you're, like drinking a soda, right? That 100 calories of soda is not the same as 100 calories of fruit. That 100 calories of soda is going to trigger you to get fat because it's a rapid influx of sugar, very like a very excess amount of sugar very rapidly, that's going to trigger the liver to start producing fat to store that excess.
Hmm.
Whereas the sugar, in the fruit is coming in very slowly, it's very balanced, and the fiber content of the sugar and the water content limits the amount that you can intake at any one time, right? So, and just like an interesting aside, so there's so much sugar in soda that they have to add phosphoric acid
Yeah.
to the soda. That's what gives it that like tangy tartness.
Hmm.
Um, they have to do that because if you ingested the sugar syrup from the
You would throw
soda
up or something
without
like
it,
that?
you would immediately vomit because your body would be like, that's way too much sugar, way too fast. So
And
they've found this end around where they add this acid to it and it tricks our senses, and
demonic.
then yeah, yeah, really. Um, so yeah, so the sugar coming in is going to be an excess there. And so anytime we have an excess, that's potentially disease causing.
Hmm.
So,
Since you talk about like pop and soda, sparkling water, I saw this guy, Oscar Patel. So I saw this because he was like controversial in saying that fruit is good for you, and someone was bashing him and saying that's not true, blah, blah, blah. So I went into Oscar Patel thinking, oh, he must be a great source of information. And suddenly he talks about sparkling water and saying how
mm.
sparkling water is will make you very beautiful. What the hell? That doesn't sound right, Lauren. Can you kind of debunk sparkling water? I mean, what's with this carbonated bullcrap?
Yeah, that's a very strange claim.
Yeah,
I wonder what
I know.
what he's basing that on. But so carbonated water, especially like the kind of like that's in soda, or like the if you get the cans of like bubbly water,
Hmm.
that's not like a naturally produced sparkling water. Um, that is carbonic acid. It's a
Yeah.
very strong acid being added to the water. Um, Bubbly things like beer and like that's a natural fermentation process, but then that's
Hmm.
fermentation, so it's creating alcohol to create gas, and that's what creates the bubbles. So the only thing I could think of in terms of like why he would be saying that sparkling water would make you beautiful would be maybe if he was thinking of mineral water, and then like because minerals are what like make our skin healthy. But
Hmm.
then again, that's the inorganic versus organic. So organic minerals, like what you find in your cucumbers and your tomatoes and your lettuce, that will make your skin and your hair beautiful. That
Hmm.
will make your nails grow long. That will make them hard and very, firm, and not break a lot, and all of that. And it'll make your complexion really nice. It'll repair the collagen in your face and get rid of wrinkles and all of that.
Hmm.
But the inorganic that's found in like mineral waters, or even like a spring water has inorganic minerals in it, that is not usable by the body. That's the kind of mineral that gets just deposited into our tissues, creating like little hard nodules, or stiffening up the muscle tissues,
Hmm.
making us tight and sore as we get older, making it hard for people to get up, the arthritis and all of the joint
Possibly
pain that people
causing
have.
kidney stones and stuff like that.
Yep, kidney stones, anything hard, anything where the body is hardening. That's all those inorganic minerals.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay, this is a very random one, but you know, um, I think people would be interested. because they were saying our or the natural hygiene texts were saying that our reproductive ability must be expressed. So what is a appropriate expression of that reproductive ability? Like because I remember Herbert Shelton was saying like doing it in excess is a big problem for much of the society today, but not doing it at the same time is it could be just as bad. What's your opinion on that?
Yeah. Yeah, that's an interesting one. So, obviously the Bible says, go forth, be fruitful and multiply.
Mm,
And that, that marriage is the central tenet of reproduction, is that, you need a man and a woman to protect the child. And so
mm.
like that monogamy is, and if you look at like our nature, monogamy is our nature. And it's, that's how we successfully protect, produce, it's like women are naturally suited to certain things and men are naturally suited to certain things. And when we come together as one, we become far more powerful than we ever are separated. But like, I think a lot of what it is like, pregnancy will deplete a woman's body
Mm,
if they're eating cooked foods.
mhm,
And so that's where that kind of excess comes in, is like if you're eating the standard American diet, cooked foods and meat and dairy products, and then you're having child after child after child, your teeth are going to start to rot and your bones are going to have osteoporosis, because with each life that you're forming,
it's
you're
taking,
giving,
reaching all
yeah,
the deficiency out
yeah,
of you all.
right? Like, because it's like if you're giving that baby bones, then where's that calcium coming from? It's coming from your own bones. If you're
Mm,
not supplying it via your diet, it's coming from your own teeth. And
mm,
so, we see that a lot I mean, even with women who have like one child, just because their body is already so depleted from, generationally, their
mhm.
mother was depleted, their mother passed down depletion to them. Now they're following through on the same diet that the mom's eating, and that's creating depletion. Um, so I think that there are certain kind of natural stopgaps that are not always, I think, 100% successful, but I think that's probably due to our unnatural diet. But like, if a woman is breastfeeding, they will not ovulate during that time. And so I think a natural body in a fully healthy state
Okay.
has these kind of natural rhythms. And then, of course, also there's the natural rhythms of just ovulation. Like, you're not like, a woman isn't just capable of being pregnant every single day of the month.
Okay.
There is a
Exactly.
smaller window.
Mhm.
And so, that kind of like there are those kind of like natural controls in place. But I do think that like ultimately our mandate is to go forth, be fruitful and multiply, and that we are meant to populate the earth with like good moral, high moral
Yeah, good
value
souls, and at the same
people.
time, lots of
Yeah.
fruit trees, create an abundance. Because fruitful and multiply can
Yeah.
be interpreted with not just people, but also like fruit trees at the same time, kind of a thing.
Yeah. And that's a great point. One of the like core lies of like modern society is like the whole like the Green New Deal, and the whole like we need to stop populating the earth
Yeah.
because we're running out of resources. And it's funny because when I was younger, I was like very left leaning, very into the whole liberal thing. I think and the vegan movement is kind of left of center.
Mm-mm.
And so there's a lot of that running through the vegan movement. And I lived in the city. I went to school in a city, and then I moved to right outside of Atlantic City, and then I lived in Las Vegas. So I lived in another city. And so it was easy to living in those cities, it was easy to like get brainwashed by this idea of like overpopulation
Mm.
and how we're running out of space and resources, and all of this stuff. And then I moved to Texas, and it's
There's
like
nobody.
it's just miles, and I mean like fields for like you can't even like fathom how much just open green space there is. I mean, I
Mm.
live on 6 acres. I can feed like
Wow.
thousands of people on the amount
Yes.
of property that we have here if we just put like enough fruit trees here.
Yeah.
And then it's like, like the fruit trees, like how much food can you produce? And a lot of the reason we think that like, oh, we're running out of space is because it takes like a cow thousands and thousands of
Yes.
pounds of food
Mm.
of edible human food
Yes.
to build up like 1 pound of beef. So
Yes.
it's like you have to give them thousands of pounds of grains
Yeah.
in order to produce 1 pound of beef, and yeah, thousands and thousands of gallons of water as well.
Yeah, to back up
But
your
if you,
point, Lauren, and from grain damage, it said one serving of beef was equal to 40 servings of fruit on the same acreage. That's what it was
yep,
saying.
yeah, and I forget the exact numbers. I actually have in the terrain group, I have a post about that, about how much like just one fruit tree produces. And I can't remember the numbers offhand, but it's you're talking about, well, I'll just give you an example. There's a guy in about 2 hours here from here in Dallas, Texas, who has a fig tree that
Mm.
produces over 150 pounds of
Wow.
fruit every season. So
Oh,
every single year, it's just him and his wife, and they get 150 pounds of figs from one tree. And so like that is the like if we all just literally started planting fruit trees
yeah.
out in our front yards, like got rid of the grass lawn and just put down some like vegetable gardens and some fruit trees. I mean, like there would never be food insecurity. You could literally feed every homeless person in your town every meal of the day and have them be like nourished and actually healing from their like mental health issues and all of that. But instead we have this system where perfectly viable land is just having heads of cattle grazed on it in order to feed people disease. And so then we have this like false concept of like we're running out of space, we're running out of land. And then of course, I mean, we're not even within that model, we're not running out of space, we're not running out of land. There's like just they just the elites just want us all in the cities, and so they want to try to move everybody to the cities to like have better control over us so that they can
Exactly.
create those like 15-minute cities, and they can control your movements, and they can have the cameras, and they can have like they're watching your every move and all of that stuff. But it's like if you want to like just get like a clear head about that, just drive out to the country and just look around. Like there's so much space, there's so much land, there's so much opportunity for us to just like grow our own food and produce like I mean there's a person in LA, right? And they have a 1/4 acre lot. And you can look this up on YouTube. They have a video where they feed their entire family of five on a 1/4 acre lot, and they produce a lot of their own income by selling to local restaurants. They sell like
Wow.
lettuces and things like that to the local restaurants, and that's like how they pay for their property. Is so they're producing on a 1/4 of an acre. It's like a
Wow.
postage stamp size lot. Most people, even in the inner city, if you buy a house in the inner city, you're going to get like close to a 1/4 of an acre or a third of
Mm.
an acre. When I lived in Henderson, Nevada, I had a third of an acre on our house. Um, and that was in the middle of the desert. And following permaculture practices, I grew watermelons every year. I grew
Wow.
sunflowers. I grew kale and lettuces. And we started putting in fruit trees. I had some fig trees. I had a pear tree. So that like if you even if you're living in the desert, if you follow like permaculture practices, you can start to like green the desert and like build up a food
Revive the
forest even
soil.
in that. Yeah, and so it's like the possibilities of like just growing your own food and producing food is it when you start to actually like look at that, become a gardener, it just becomes so obvious that they're just lying to us about all of this like global warming, all that green green new deal, and we've got to like sell all the land to Bill Gates so that he can manage it better
Oh
for
my
us.
gosh. So you can keep
you know
continually spraying all the crap in the air so that only the
yeah,
GMO modified seeds can grow in this,
yeah.
horrid environment. Oh my gosh. Just,
And GMO is just wild. Is
yeah.
like they've taken something that just occurs naturally, like plants produce seeds, and then they've patented it and made it illegal for the farmers to keep the seeds. So these farmers get locked into these contracts where they can never get out of debt, and they're just slaves. They are slaves to Monsanto because they get They buy the seed from Monsanto and then they buy the Roundup. It's Roundup ready crops. So you buy the seed for the crops and then you buy the Roundup and then you spray that all over your field and you give yourself cancer by spraying this, and then having to live and breathe that every single day. But then when you sign that contract, you're signing that says I cannot save seeds from my plants. So all the seeds that are produced from that plant, can't save those. That's illegal. They'll come after you. So next year you have to buy the seeds again. So how does a farmer get out of debt? A farmer usually gets out of debt by you invest early on into your soil, into your seeds, and then you save your seeds year after year to plant the next year. And so that's how you actually build yourself out of debt.
Mm.
And if you have to keep going into debt every single year to buy these seeds, then you remain enslaved. And they've done this not only in the US, but they've done it in a lot of like
Oh
third
yeah.
world countries where people
Thailand.
are living in poverty. And so there's some countries have actually snapped back and have outlawed Monsanto from their country.
Mm.
But it's just again deception upon deception upon deception.
Yeah, it is truly vampiric. Um,
Yeah.
let's see. One thing I did really want to get into was this fruitarian girl that died recently. Have you heard of this? Like maybe
Yeah, was it Zana Samsonova or something
something
like
like
that?
that a few months back, and I was just looking at that like it has to be some kind of propaganda. It has to be some kind of a fear tactic. What
Yeah.
was that all about? Did you look into it much?
I have a I have a detailed article on my website about that if anybody wants
Okay.
to read about it. But yeah, it's actually let me see if I can pull it up real quick
Oh yeah,
for
sure.
you so you can see the because it's propaganda. But let's see.
And I don't know how you're doing on time, but I did want to also go into this breatharian movement.
Oh, can you give me ability to share my
Oh,
screen?
sure. Okay, let's see. I haven't done this in a while. Allow, I think. Possibly you can do with this.
Okay, yep, that's it. Okay, so yeah, so if you saw the when this happened. So this actually happened, I think, last year sometime. I wrote the article back in August 2023.
Hmm.
But it's like anytime something like this happens, it's just rehashed and rehashed and rehashed and rehashed
Mhm.
until, it's just
It
and then people
catches.
think that this is yeah, and they'll keep sharing it and sharing it and sharing it. But yeah, so it's like if you look at the headlines, influencer reportedly died of starvation from raw vegan diet. That's not the facts of the case, but that's the headline. Vegan raw food diet influencer Xana D'Art dies of suspected starvation. Um, and so yeah, if you just read through all of those, so what they did was this woman had anorexia, okay,
Mm.
and she was living an extremely restrictive diet. She was basically living off of very, very low calorie fruits like melons.
I
She
see.
refused to drink water,
Mm.
which, unfortunately that's a scam that like runs through the raw food communities and a lot of people push that as like, oh, if I just eat all the fruit, the watery fruit, I never need to drink water. And that's how a lot of people get, really just fail at this because you can't not drink water. Every frugivore on the planet drinks water. Um, but yeah, so she had so there's a couple things, and obviously we don't have her medical records, so we don't know what happened once she entered the hospital. But what we do know is that she was extremely restricted with her diet. So, you know, while we don't believe in like the balanced diet,
Mm.
we do need nutrient variety. We need adequate calories. We need both fruits and greens and nuts and seeds.
Hmm.
We need all of those, appropriate foods, not
Mm.
just watery fruit. Like we can't just live off of watermelon alone. And you see that all the time in the raw food groups. It's like, oh, I'm going on watermelon island and I'm
Yeah,
only
128th day on watermelon.
yeah, and it's like I get the appeal of it because like you're giving yourself a sugar rush, so you're getting that sugar high. Um, but our body needs a balance of low sugar fruits and high sugar fruits. Even sugar coming from fruits in excess is an excess, and excess creates disease. So,
Mm.
and our body needs minerals. We need like we need vitamin K, which is found in the lettuce greens in order to build muscle tissues. So when you're being extremely restrictive like that, you're not benefiting your body. Like going on a grape fast or going on a watermelon only fast is not benefiting your body.
Wow.
You might be doing better than if you were eating McDonald's,
Yeah.
but you're not doing the optimal. You're not giving yourself optimal health because you're making your body work so much harder by not just
Yeah.
providing for its needs.
Or
So
a
your body
juice
needs
fast,
that.
correct?
Yeah, juice fast too. Well, juicing is a problematic for two reasons. One, you're removing the fiber. Fiber is essential for your bowels to move. And number two, by removing that fiber, you are flushing sugar into the cells very rapidly instead of them being absorbed slowly. And then the other issue with that is that a lot of times when people juice, they start adding in things that are not natural foods. So you start juicing like an entire bag of carrots, whereas like you might eat a carrot on your salad once a month, but it's one carrot that you're shredding on top just for like a little bit of nutrient variety or whatever. You're not eating like an entire bag of carrots. But when you start juicing, you're juicing an entire bag of carrots. Or like the medical medium guy, he likes to push that celery juice. Well,
Hmm.
celery is an herb, so celery is not even really great for it. We can eat it in small quantities, but it is stimulating. It's a stimulant.
Huh.
And so you're juicing like, but if you're eating it, like you might have like some celery sticks with almond butter and you have like three stalks, or you're having it chopped up on your salad and you're having like one or two stalks chopped up in your salad, versus when you're making it in this juice, you're juicing an
Oh,
entire package of
yeah.
celery. So that's totally
Or
unnatural. Then people
celery
are
salt.
juicing, yeah, and then people juice like beets. Like beets are not a human food, and they're very, very harsh, and they're very hard on our kidneys.
Hmm.
Um, Cabbage, people start juicing cabbage. Again, we can eat a little bit of cabbage here and there, especially if it's like fresh grown in your garden and you pick it young and it's tender and it's not bitter. But most of the people are buying it from the grocery store when it's these big giant bitter heads of cabbage.
Hmm.
And that's got lots of toxins in it. And so then you're concentrating those toxins by juicing them and removing all of the fiber. And so it's like, so that juicing just gets more and more problematic. But yeah, so, if you're eating very, very restricted, and that's what she was doing, is that she was
Hmm.
eating extremely restricted. And I think let me see if I have it right here. Um, I don't have headlines in this. Let's see. Um,
Was she dry fasting?
yeah, she was dry
Of
fasting.
course.
And then she was juicing smoothies, sprouts, which, I mean, sprouts aren't going to kill you, but like they're really not a great food for us. Like if you think about it in terms of um, how nature works, so sprouts are spicy or bitter because the once the seed has sprouted, it wants to go on to get big enough to produce fruit or to produce leaves so that it can sustain itself so that it can reproduce again.
Hmm.
And so in that sprouting stage, it's the most vulnerable. And so in order to protect it from being eaten by herbivores, it releases these chemicals that make it taste bitter so that it repels us away so that we don't want to eat it. And then of course we start eating it. And
We ignore it.
we just totally ignore our sense of taste and say like, oh, this is spicy. Oh, okay, I'm just gonna keep eating it. But yeah, so like, if you have like say broccoli sprouts, that broccoli wants to produce a broccoli head and then produce broccoli flowers and reproduce itself over and over again. And if you eat the broccoli when it's really young and tender,
Hmm.
um, then the plant can still survive. So you can
Hmm.
like cut off little sprouts and it will, you can get
Regrow.
those like little like, yeah, it'll keep regrowing, and it's not gonna like permanently injure the plant and kill the plant, and so the plant can still survive. So with fruit is kind of the most ideal food. When we pick a fruit, we don't injure the fruit tree at all. It
Yeah,
actually
we
just
give life.
releases into our hand, and
Yes.
then we spread the seed, and so it's like there's no injury occurring to the plant in order for it to produce food for us, and that's why the most ideal foods, we're not injuring the plant in any way.
Hmm.
So we're eating, if we're eating like lettuces, we're taking the outer large leaves off, the inner small leaves continue to grow, and then it just keeps
Hmm.
producing until it produces flowers and seeds, and then we save those seeds and we plant those seeds, and next year we have more food for ourselves. And so it's this like symbiotic relationship. um but yeah, so she was eating very, very little food. She was eating an extremely narrow range of foods. She was
Hmm.
eating a very small amount of calories, and obviously there was a lot of people that reached out to her, and she was like extremely thin. She was chronically underweight. um so she and then they all I could find on her diet is they said fruits, sunflower seeds, sprouts, fruit smoothies, and juices. So we know that she wasn't eating lettuces, or at least it's not reported in any of the stuff, and it wasn't like shown obviously in any of her Instagram things. So she's already neglecting one of the major food groups. Nuts and seeds didn't seem to be a part of her body. So again, we require those essential fatty acids. They're important for our nervous system and important for like our brain function. Um, and so we look at it, we're going, okay, well, clearly she wasn't following the natural hygiene diet. She was doing this very, very restrictive eating program with like anorexia. So that's a big part of it. Is like this is an anorexic person that the media is just in like the most shameful way possible is taking advantage of her disease, her mental disorder, and using it to like as a weapon, a cudgel against like the vegan movement. But then what we know also is that she went into the hospital. And so if somebody is already in a weakened state and then they go into
Oh,
the
geez.
hospital is going to start applying poisons to the body. And so she died in the hospital. She
Of
didn't die
course.
at home of starvation. She died in the hospital of hospital intervention. But then, I mean, but obviously what she was doing was not good for her health. And she was dry fasting, and that was definitely reported. And dry fasting is extremely dangerous because, again, the solution to pollution is dilution. We want water going in. We want to flush out all that toxic stuff that has been in our body for so long. Body needs water for every process. Every cell needs water. We respirate out water, so we're constantly getting more and more dehydrated. So we need to be replenishing our water
Mm,
constantly. And
mm.
so dry fasting is like one of the worst things that you can do for your health, and it puts so much strain on your kidneys. So yeah, it's an extremely sad situation, and probably like had she learned natural hygiene, she wouldn't have gotten into that situation. But unfortunately, there is a lot of just raw food groups that just kind of run on air, on nonsense, and they just don't promote good science founded information. They just
Common
kind of
sense.
yeah, it's kind of like a feeding of like, and I remember this from the Dr. Morris group, is that there was this one instance where, everybody's extremely obsessed with this idea of kidney filtration and of getting all of this, they want this sediment to show up in their urine because then they feel like they're healing. And so some kid, he was like, I think 17 or 18 or something, discovered that if you drink lemon juice and dates, that you get lots of sediment in your urine.
Oh,
And so then even Dr. Morris was like promoting it on one of his videos. He's like, oh, yeah, somebody from our group has discovered this great filtration secret. If you just, drink all this lemon juice and water, then, your kidneys will start filtering and, you get the. And the first thing that I thought was like, how do we know that the lemon juice and the dates aren't just producing sediment
yeah.
themselves?
Because they're opposite
How is
food
this
groups, right? Like you're supposed to not combine very acidic with very sweet. Am I incorrect?
Well, so dates are a dried fruit, so acid fruit, dried fruit technically would be okay food
Oh, okay.
combining, but I think it's just more like, I mean, lemons are just not a natural food for us. They're not, I mean, at least especially not in their current form,
Yeah.
but they're very high in minerals. And so most likely what the person is seeing in that cloudiness, because they're not
Ah,
testing what is the cloudiness, because your urine could be cloudy because you're alleviating excess mineral
minerals.
content, or it
Interesting.
could be proteins that are being, or it could be fats that are coming out, and it'll be like oily and have a sheen to it. So there's so many different things that come out in our urine. What we want to see is lymph waste coming out in our urine, but that you might have lymph waste coming out in your urine even when your urine looks relatively clear.
Mm.
Just because there's a bunch of cloudiness at the bottom of the jar doesn't mean that you're actually eliminating anything useful. So, but yeah, that's one of the things that we see a lot in the groups is that people, it's like in the terrain group, I always encourage people like read the books. Don't just believe what I'm saying.
Yes.
Here, I'm directing you to this. I'm going to explain it. I'll explain it in the simplest way possible so that hopefully you understand it, but don't just follow me blindly. Read the books. Look at the research. That's why we have hundreds of files in our group, because we want people looking and reading all the books. Like we have every book that we can get in a PDF form. We get it. We've spent thousands of hours scouring the web trying to, and like and talking to people and getting like PDF copies of people's books and things like that. Or getting like like Shelton, obviously he's like out of copyright now, so we'll
Oh,
get the
is he?
PDF versions of his books. Well, I mean, a lot of his books are
Hmm.
some of them are still under like copyright for through his estate, but like a lot of his older works are available in PDF form. And so, we did a lot of research to find all like as many of these books as we could so that we could offer these resources free to people so that you can actually like read about the detailed science. Don't just like blindly follow what somebody in a Facebook group tells you. Because that's what we see happening is like you have this like the watermelon island is like, it's just people who don't know much feeding off other people who don't know much. And it's just the blind leading the blind. And then thinking like, well, watermelon is good for you. So if I do nothing but watermelon, it must be even better for you. And it's like, that's not how it works. We need the variety of
Hmm.
nutrients. We need seasonal change. Like I won't even eat watermelon unless it's like June, July, or August, because you're not going to
Hmm.
get good watermelon outside of the summer. I mean, maybe if you have like somebody producing in a greenhouse somewhere, maybe it'd be like halfway decent. But like once you've grown watermelon in your own garden
Hmm.
and tasted like
Your
real
own, yeah.
fresh, like 10 out of 10 watermelon, like the stuff
You
you get
can't
at the
go
grocery
back.
store, yeah, it's just you realize the difference and like eating unripe watermelon means you're probably going to be fermenting it. And so
Hmm.
like the other thing we see all the time is the melon belly. People talking about like, oh yeah, I ate so much melon and now I got melon belly. Okay, that's not a good thing. That means you're fermenting. That means your belly is swollen and distended because you have a whole bunch of gas building up, which is creating alcohol, which is poisoning your body. So no, we don't want melon belly. We never want melon belly. And if you're getting melon belly, it's probably because you're eating unripe melon. And so stop eating melon in the middle of December. Like eat your melon in the summer. Eat your nuts and seeds in the winter because nuts and seeds are naturally coming into, ripeness then. Eat your apples. Apples are ripe in the winter. Eat your citrus. Citrus is ripe in the winter. And so we need that balance across the year. We need to be eating our grapes in the spring, and we need to be eating our melons in the summer, and we need to be eating our citrus in the winter, and so on and so forth.
Lauren, I did want to ask because this whole breatharian thing is also becoming like a fad too. And in
Yeah.
relation to that, I also was seeing TC Fry talk about I'm trying to right now look up the name Villacomas. The here, okay, let's see. The Villacambians and the Hunzas apparently don't eat that much calories. So like the Hunzas apparently on average eat like 1900 calories and the Villacambians eat like 1300 calories. And they're both working really hard and intense, like maybe 3500 to 7000 calorie level, days. So where is that coming from? Like are they maybe because the food is so good, getting more for their calories, more bang for their buck? Are they assimilating it better because they're healthier? What are the factors involved
Yeah.
with this?
Yeah. So, a couple things. So first of all, when we're eating natural foods from birth, we're not injuring our digestive tract, and so our
Hmm.
digestive tract is assimilating much better. And so what we see is people who even, growing up on the SAD diet, the Western diet, and then say you put in like 10 years on natural hygiene, your calorie needs are going to drop because you're going to get more and more efficient with your food intake.
Hmm.
But if you're in the first 5 years or, maybe even longer, you're going to need more calories. You're going to need more intake because your body is not as efficient
Efficient.
at absorbing things.
Hmm.
So that's part of it. We also see differences like I know people always say like, oh, Lauren Lockman says that he only eats 1,000 calories a day, and it's like, well, first of all, I've seen Lauren Lockman eat like nut and seed based desserts and talk about like all of these like raw carrot cakes or whatever that they raw like those raw desserts that they made for
Hmm.
whatever holiday and stuff like that. So yeah, maybe on average, maybe on some days, but I'd love to see him actually put out an accounting of that of like this
Hmm.
is what I, this is what I eat, this is the amount, this is the the quantity and all of that
Mm.
over like a month or something like that. Because yes, some days we'll eat less than others if we're more active, if we're more sedentary. So for me, I'm 5'3". My calories will range from about 1,400 on a very sedentary day when I'm like stuck at my desk all day and don't really need a lot of food because I'm not doing a lot. When I'm out in the garden all day, 2,000, 2,500, 3,000. If I'm going out for a 20-mile bike ride, I'll easily eat 20 or 30 bananas. That's, 100 calories a banana. Um, so what our input and uh, how much we're utilizing versus how much we input, that's going to vary from person to person. And so it's always
Mm.
based on averages. The other thing we have to keep in mind is that calories is a totally inexact science.
Mm.
So calorie is determined by setting fire to food.
Yeah.
Obviously, and in an ex vivo study.
Setting,
Okay, so
yeah.
that's how we've come to this like X amount of calories in X food. Um Obviously, when we put food into our stomach, we are not setting fire to the food.
Mm.
So it's
Accurate.
not something that should be relied on as an exact science. What it
Mm-mm.
should be is a guideline.
Okay,
And so I
gotcha.
tell people in our group, 1,700 to 2,000 calories is your goal. You don't
Mm.
have to hit it every single day, but what we're trying to avoid doing is having people where they fall into this like I ate very small meals when I was eating cooked food, so I'm going to continue eating very small meals now. And then they're only
Mm.
eating like 500 calories a day, and then all of a sudden they're losing muscle tissue and they're getting like literally anorexic.
And then they end up
Um,
like this girl, and then there's an article made of them, and then we get a bad rep.
exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And unfortunately, there's a lot of within the raw food groups, there's a lot of encouragement of this because people say, oh, the weight loss is just normal detox. Well, I can tell you of all the clients that I've had, it's extremely rare for you to get excessive weight loss
Mm.
through normal detox. It does occasionally happen. There are
Mm.
some people whose bodies were extremely toxic and they were eating adequate amounts and their body just needed to strip itself down. And even with my dogs, I do see that sometimes where or they'll go through a period where their appetite drops. Like Sheba was just going through that where she lost she's that 9-pound dog and she lost almost a pound, so that's
Oh
pretty
wow.
significant on a dog that size. Um, but she had gone from her normal meals as like 4 or 5 bananas a day, and she was down like eating like 2 bananas every day, and that was her appetite was just suppressed because she was going through this cleaning. But then as soon as she got through it,
Mm.
she like just about 2 weeks ago, her appetite ramped back up again, and then she was eating 5 bananas, and then we gave her a couple of meat meals to get the weight back up on her real quick, and now she's back up to like three, like about half a pound gained
Mm.
from
The
which so
loss.
she needs to gain like another half a pound roughly.
Mm. Mm.
And so we sometimes we do see that, but again, with her losing that weight, it wasn't like when you see the photos of like the Auschwitz survivors,
Yeah.
right? And then and they're like bones. It's not like that.
Mm.
That we'll get a little bit thinner than we should be, but if you're starting to get to the point where like that Zana woman looked, like that's not detox. That's not normal
That's
detox. That is
starvation.
you are chronically starving yourself.
Mm.
And the problem is, there was actually a study during the war.
Mm.
They had a bunch of people who were conscientious objectors who didn't want to go to the war, and so they agreed to, in lieu of going to fight in war, that they would do these studies on these people, which is just crazy, but it is what it is. And so they had them on a starvation diet where basically they were given just a little bit under what their body needed. So it was like, okay, they determined that person's height and weight, they needed 1,500 calories. And so they were giving them like 1,200 calories.
Huh.
And so they were chronically
Starving them.
underfed for a period of like 6 months, I think it was.
Okay.
And then what they found was that in the refeeding process,
Mm.
these people developed anorexia
Huh.
symptoms.
Huh.
And so we can actually bring on the mental disorder of anorexia by just underfeeding. And so that's why I think it's really important to encourage people when they're first starting out to make sure that you are eating abundantly, that you're checking your calories, even though calories are not an exact science, even though it's just like a ballpark number. Like we want to make sure that you're close to that 2000 mark and not close to that 1000 mark is
Got it.
basically, what we want to do. So, so everybody's going to be different. Like, people who are older, they have less muscle mass on their body, so they burn less calories. So you don't need as much calories. If
Mm.
you're working a
A tough job.
heavy lifting job,
Right.
you're obviously going to need a lot more calories. So it's going to be on a situation by situation basis. But at least if you're aiming for that goal of 1700 and you're getting like close to that, you know that you're not going to be underfeeding. And if you're currently going through detox and you are getting very, very thin, please stop what you're doing, take a look, put your calories into chronometer, check it, make sure that you're at least within like a close range of that, and do what you can to kind of up your calories to get that
Mm.
up, because you really shouldn't be, like I said, it's very rare. And almost every person that has come to me excessively thin, we've been able to find where they were making mistakes, get their calories up, correct the things. Like, a lot of times people come to me and they've been on this like watermelon only, or the only doing fruit thing. And so we get them eating their salads again. We get them incorporating a little bit of nuts and seeds, and then, within a couple of months their weight is coming back up again.
Mm.
So it's almost always, if you're finding somebody that is excessively thin like that woman, like it's almost always, like I would say like 99.5% of the time you're doing something wrong. You're
Mm.
underfeeding, you're neglecting one of the important food groups. Like, the biggest one is like the lettuce, the salads. People coming off of cooked foods, they don't like the taste of salad, or they've convinced themselves that they don't like the taste of salad. And so they don't want to incorporate that, and they want to just eat the fruits all the time. But without that, you're missing your vitamin K. You're not going to be producing muscle tissue. So you're
Mm.
going to start losing your muscle tissue. So stuff like that, we just have to make
Incorporate.
sure that we're,
Got it. Well,
yeah.
I think that's a pretty good episode today. I think we've gone pretty long, but perhaps we can end on your thoughts of breatharianism, and because I think that kind of relates into it, because there's this idea that perhaps there was a time where it was easier to get the calories and the nutritional needs through the air. I'm not sure, but there's this
No.
idea that no, yeah, there's this.
No, no. So, if you look into all of the Breatharians, you always find that they get discovered as scam artists every single
Mm.
time. Every single one of them has always been like caught in the act of, and usually it's like they're caught in the act of eating like a meat meal or like a hamburger or something like that. I remember there was this one guy that was like, um, I eat McDonald's because it feeds my soul, and I don't need it. I can survive without it, but and there was another one that was like this Indian guru, and they like a news crew said, are you willing to do like a week in the hospital under observation, where
Mm.
we can check your vitals, and we can we can see that you're not eating food. And the guy only lasted like 3 days before he got like really sick. And it's like, it's funny because if somebody's eating properly, like a raw food diet, like a week of fasting is no big deal. But if you're
Mm.
not eating properly, then day
Mm.
three is when you start to get your detox symptoms from
Uh,
from that, moving into that fast.
mm.
But and obviously they're dehydrated, if you're because these people, they claim that they don't even need water a lot of times, and so they get rapidly dehydrated. And so there's been a number of times where people have agreed. There was like a woman in the US that was like leading this like almost like a cult, like she had like a big following of people,
Mm.
and she agreed to do it. And I think she made it like a week, under, it was like in her house.
Mm.
um but yeah, it's like anytime these people are actually put under any sort of
Scrutiny.
scrutiny,
Yeah.
they fail.
Okay.
And often, and more often, they're found out to just be total frauds. Like they're out there, they get caught at like McDonald's, or they get caught at like,
The worst
it's
possible.
yeah, yeah, it's the craziest thing. Um, so yeah, so I mean, you just got to think logically. Like if we were meant to survive on air, we wouldn't have a digestive tract.
Mm.
We wouldn't have the
The
facilities
capability.
to, yeah, to eat if we, if we didn't need to eat. And even this, okay, if a baby, right, if you're a breatharian, if we're naturally breatharians, then a baby should come out of the womb not looking to suckle off its mom's breast. We
Mm.
should have to like force the baby to eat,
Hmm.
right? Because they should be able to just breathe in the air and everything
Yeah,
will be
and
wonderful.
everything's fine. Mm.
Yeah, yeah. And so, it's just yeah, and it's a really I've had a few people come out of the breatharian movement, and it's like really damaging to people, like
Mm.
psychologically,
Yeah.
because they put them like, it's like, oh, I'm so weak. I gave into the food devil. I gave in, I'm like this, I'm a terrible person because like, oh, I can't fight this like devil inside me that just craves this food. And it's like, no, you're starving to death. You're not like, there's nothing wrong with you for trying to eat. And so yeah, it's a dangerous, like
Don't let
really
guilt kill
toxic
you,
movement.
literally.
Yeah, yeah. It's preying on people's like guilt and weaknesses and like, so many people suffer from like disordered eating, like anorexia, bulimia, because they're just not taught from a young age how to eat properly to maintain their weight and maintain their health. And so they feel very badly about themselves. Like, I'm overweight. I want to, not eat to starve myself. And I know because I was anorexic as a teenager, and it was
Mm.
like, for me, it was like, I grew up on kind of junk foods. We grew up on like the Hostess cakes and the Little Debbie brownies and canned vegetables and lots of cheese and dairy products. And I went vegetarian at age 11, so I didn't eat the meat, but I just swapped that for dairy and processed carbohydrates. So it was like,
Mm.
macaroni and cheese. Um, so then and I struggled with my weight, and I wasn't like obese or anything, but I felt uncomfortable at the weight that I was. And so then, I resorted to starving myself because I didn't know what else to do. And so I would go for like weeks on end where I would just eat like, I would have like coffee, tons of coffee, and then I would have like one little Debbie brownie, and I would have like Arizona iced tea, and I
Oh
would have like a
Lord.
candy bar. Like this is how I went through school. Like I went through high
Oh
school and
my
college like
gosh.
this. I like it's amazing. Like it's amazing the ability of our body to
To survive.
survive.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, like the stuff that I did to my body as like in like my college years, just yeah, it's just mind blowing. Um, but so it's they're preying on these people that are like, oftentimes, maybe they're not in the best headspace, they're not feeling the best about themselves, and so
Yeah.
they're susceptible to that type of manipulation where you're like, oh, I'm a terrible person if I give in to the food. And it's just, yeah, it's upsetting. Like I hate seeing people hurt, and I hate seeing people injured like that. And that really is, it's people being hurt and injured, and it's just wrong. I mean, food, like our natural foods bring us so much joy. You shouldn't be afraid to eat them.
Yeah, you should be able to enjoy what the creator has created for you, right? I mean, there's a purpose for everything. So, well,
Yeah,
Lauren, again,
eat fruit and be well.
yes. Thank you for everything again. I mean, you are again shining a bright light on all these fallacies and these concerning dead ends of, health fads and remedies that lead to nothing and often death. So, again, I just want to thank you again, and yeah, hopefully we can keep doing these podcasts. And
Yeah, definitely.
I also wanted to reach out to the natural hygiene community. If there's any people that have gone through a fast or have gone through Lauren's training and teachings and gotten better, I would also like to invite you guys onto the podcast as well. So
Yeah.
if you have any last words, finish the podcast for us, Lauren.
Oh, I would just say, if you're questioning it, dig into the resources. There's so many books on natural hygiene that you can get. Like, don't listen to us and take our word as gospel. Do your own research. And yeah, the wonderful thing about natural hygiene is that it is incredibly logical and rational. And when you start to read through it and you start to like just delve into the
Yes,
information,
it
it's
all
like
makes sense.
you get this like, it's just like oh, like all these questions that you've ever had in your life about like, wherever medicine has failed to answer your questions, natural hygiene provides you with a like very clear, very rational, very straightforward answer. And that's what drew me into it in the first place because I literally opened the books and I was just like, oh, duh. How did I not think of that? Oh, of course that's like that. Oh, of course. Oh, that makes perfect sense. Oh, yeah, of course that doesn't make sense to poison ourselves. Yeah. And so it's just completely, rational and objective
Straightforward.
and yeah, straightforward. And, so just, you know, do your research, do your due diligence because your health is 100% under your control and, nobody's going to fix your health for you. And you don't want to be that person that, squanders their health in their youth and then tries to buy back their health in
Yeah.
their old age because you can't do it. You got to put in the work to be healthy and it's a choice and you can choose like every day it's an easy choice. You can choose to eat that apple or you could choose to eat that bag of potato chips and both of them are easy choices. Both of them are easy to do, but one of them is going to get you to health and one of them is going to get you to pain and suffering.
Well, I think that's a good message to leave the people. So with that, thank you, Lord, and we'll see you next time.
My pleasure.